Salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the podcast, the forum where social outfit outcasts, crazy weirdos, and online nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the nerdy co-host, aka Dolphin Together, Dolphin L. Morton.
Good evening, everyone. Small announcement that I probably should make. Next weekend, I will be going to the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair at Mount Hope Winery, and therefore, if we have the show on time as usual, I will be recording from a hotel room, and therefore will be subject to the hotel Wi-Fi. In the event that I can't swing that, we will be rescheduling to Monday, but my hope and the current plan is that I will be doing it from the hotel room. And in the event of that, you guys might also meet one of my friends from high school who will be going to the Ren Fair with me. So do be aware of that. Next week, I might be recording from a hotel room, and that will be the reason why. I also might have a new sword by then because I'm going to a Ren Fair and I might get a new sword cane. Though it will probably be a cheap modern reproduction instead of an antique nice one this time, because last time, even though I was basically buying it at cost, as in it probably was worth about $300 and I bought it for $300, even then that was like my entire budget, so I probably won't be getting another nice sword cane depending on what the cane dealer has this time, but I probably will have at least a new sword cane come Sunday.
And I'm your host, last time I want to be the brain of pop culture. Everyone doing that.
I'm doing well. Like I say, I'm excited for Ren Fair. I'm hoping that it doesn't fuck with our schedule too much. But like I say, either I'll be doing it from the hotel room next week, or we will be moving it to Monday, depending.
So we're starting off with an oldie, but I'm not going to say goodie because
No, it's our white whale. It's our reoccurring arch enemy. It's the lead of our reoccurring rogue gallery, the rewriting Ripley Star Wars article.
Yeah. And again, as I said before, there is a playlist which I have updated today of all the videos where we have the rewriting Ripley article. The last one was actually 218. So yeah, if you want to check coverage of this article, like the full coverage of it, like I said, there's rewriting.
We organized it into an entire playlist, and I'm pretty sure the first time we did it, we went for the entire 4 hours or 5 hours or however long we went for the first time.
I think it was about 3 hours, and then because we just did not expect to take that long.
Yeah, we didn't expect this to be the reoccurring antagonist of the show, but
yeah,
wouldn't you go right and know it? We're 4 years in, and I'm pretty sure this article actually came out in 2019, and we're still going at it. Although fortunately, after the first couple sessions, we had the good sense to limit ourselves to an hour apiece per show.
You know what? I am going to look that up real quick just to see when the first. Because I am curious because I'm not entirely sure when it started, but yeah, Let
I
me
thought
pull it.
I thought it was fairly early on, like somewhere in the like 50s, 60s was when we started, but
I honestly don't remember. Honestly, I'll be fully honest. I try to block out a lot of this article.
it really is weapon, like it's like the normal caliber of stuff we talk about on this show is weapons grade stupid. This
You
thing
ready?
this thing is nuke grade stupid.
Yeah,
It is the kind of stupid that can level cities.
yeah. Hello, Giant Turtle. YouTube notification. Yeah, honestly, I don't know why, but I had a similar problem as well with YouTube notifications. Granted, my phone is kind of old. I've had it for almost like 10 years, so I can
Yeah,
also read.
notifications and YouTube and StreamYard are grr.
Well, that's also why like I'm starting to put links of it in Discord so everyone can put a message about it.
Yep.
Like, yeah. Um, I'm doing well until we start reading this, but yes, how we
Yeah,
are.
and like I just got finished saying, I'm looking forward to the Ren Fair next weekend, which will either result in me doing the show from a hotel room next week, or we will move it to Monday, depending. It really does all depend on when we get back from the Ren Fair on Sunday, um, and also how the hotel Wi-Fi is. If we get back by around 8 o'clock and the Wi-Fi is decent, then I'll be doing it from the hotel room, and you guys will probably meet my best friend from high school in the process. If the Wi-Fi is shit or unreliable, or it just takes too long for us to get back to the hotel room after the Ren Fair, then we will be doing it on Monday, depending.
107. Oh, sorry,
Yeah, and we're currently on
2:30.
yeah. And just so everyone remembers the math, there are 52 weeks in a year, and we, I'm pretty sure, have not missed more than 1 week. So we've been doing this for a bit. So yeah, it would have been it would have been the second year we've been doing this show that we started this, and we're still going at it 3 years
Yeah,
later.
came out March 2021. For the first time I told the article.
Okay, so it was during the pandemic. I actually thought it was a little bit earlier, which may or may not tell you the time warping capacities of this article.
Well, also 2021. So
Yeah, the pandemic was like 2 or 3 years all crammed into one, wasn't it?
mhm.
Anyway,
Anyway, yeah. Okay, so I did start
once
off.
more into the breach.
Yeah, we are going to read the last parts just so we have some context. What we were reading, what we are going to read. So we are recovering. So
Hmm.
just so we have some context. Review bombing. Like mass downvoting, review bombing is an organized takeover of online reviews that make a piece of content appear more hated than it really is. Uh, the best example of review bombing is The Last Jedi Rotten Tomatoes score that caused a flurry of controversy in the press that was instrumental in pushing the narrative that The Last Jedi was a polarizing film among fans and general audience.
Okay, sweetheart. Here's the problem. One, you're presupposing that these review bombing sessions, quote unquote, are organized, which they may not be. They may just be an emergent negative reaction among the plebs. And two, if you want to demonstrate, I'm pretty sure I covered this already, but if you want to demonstrate that the negative reaction is false or overblown or overemphasized, then what you need to do is go through the reviews and demonstrate that they were either left by bots or left by the same people using multiple accounts. That is how you demonstrate that this controversy is less legitimate than people would normally think. Because unless I'm misremembering, what you're about to do instead is rather than address the statistical errors that may or may not exist, the ones that I just outlined, either people using bots or people using multiple accounts and leaving multiple negative reviews even though they're just one person. If you did either of those two things, that would actually be a rational way of going about it. What you are instead going to do is presuppose that the negative reaction is disproportional and that the people leaving them are just invalid. When moral validity or abstract validity is not the thing under discussion, the thing under discussion is the simple numbers. Because no matter how much you find a certain group of people to be illegitimate, if they exist and legitimately hold the beliefs they hold, you don't get to write them off and just call them illegitimate. Because legitimacy doesn't have anything to do with this here. What this here has to do with is substance of the argument and or the mathematical fact of people's existence. End of discussion. Moving on.
Guys from alt-right Facebook groups claim credit for the film aren't rotten audience score of 46%. The most obvious indication that the Last Jedi was review bombed was Ron Smith's decision to overhaul the voting system and give the ability to review films only to verified users. These changes were made in the lead-up to Marvel after it became clear that the movie was being politically targeted by a boycott.
And once again, I have to point this out. Does it ever count as review bombing if the official critics decide to do it? Or if they wind up emergently doing it? Because that's the other thing. I would imagine that if you were here and I explained to you that these people might not be illegitimate, they might just be organically having a negative reaction to the movie. You would say it doesn't matter if they're legitimate because their perspective is invalid. So here's the question: does that also apply to the halls of officialdom and academia and artistic legitimacy when they do it? Like, for example, when the entire film critic class beat the shit out of Joaquin Phoenix's Joker and Todd Phillips' Joker, or when they beat the shit out of the Super Mario Brothers movie earlier this year. Now, granted, this is a article from 2021, so obviously I don't expect them to have an opinion on the Mario thing.
Wait, I don't. No, it was older, right? It was older actually than 2021. We just started in 2021.
Right. I still want to say it was 2019-ish or 2020.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to open another tab because I want to scroll all the way back up. In a second. Okay, no, actually, okay, my fault. Yeah, no, it was 2021, March 11th, 2021. My bad.
Okay, so we basically started it as soon as it showed up. We're very, very close to.
Huh. I could have sworn it was a little older, but okay. Huh.
Okay, well, good for us for being on time, even back in the day. But in any case,
yeah.
Also, second thing. Once again, and I know I harp on this point way too often with this particular article, but it's because they keep misusing the terminology and not citing any reason why they're misusing the terminology. You have absolutely bumfuck no idea what the word alt-right means. Alt-right is a variation on softcore white nationalism that was a splinter cell of a splinter cell of a splinter cell of the anti-SJW movement back in 2017. And it was led by people like J.F. Gariepy, Edgy Spinks, and of course, the most famous of them all, Richard Spencer. And here's the thing. The alt-right, for all practical purposes, is a tiny, irrelevant collapse to non-entity. There probably aren't even multiple alt-right Facebook groups. So what you mean when you say alt-right in this context is just anyone of an anti-SJW mindset. And as I pointed out to you on many an occasion, you don't have to be right-wing or even non-left wing to be an anti-SJW. Hi, I'm Dalton Mortimer. I voted for Bernie Sanders both times, and my second and third choices were Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard. So yeah, no, you can. And I'm gay, and I'm crippled, and I'm a religious minority. So, yeah, no, I don't need to be right wing to oppose social justice. I just have I just have to be consistent in my anti-moralism stance. Um, and by the way, the alt-right isn't even a sizable proportion of the anti-SJW movement, to the point that I'm pretty sure most of the alt-right, the actual self-identifying diagnosable alt-right, don't even consider themselves anti-SJWs anymore. They just want SJW standards applied to rich white twats instead of minorities and shit. Anyway, moving on.
Right. Okay. We know from the analysis of 20 Anti The Last Jedi YouTubers that the same people who pushed extensive hate against Last Jedi were leading the hate against Kevin Marvel.
Again, if you want to show that this outrage is illegitimate, then you need to demonstrate that these people are false accounts. And the way you do that is by demonstrating that either they are pre-programmed bots designed to leave negative reviews, or it's one person using multiple accounts and spamming negative reviews. If you can't actually demonstrate either of those two things, then I don't give a fuck about your abstract moralism portion of the program, because it doesn't matter if you consider them morally or abstractly legitimate or not. If they substantively actually exist, then you don't get to whine and poo-poo them. If they exist and their perspective is sincere, then you don't get to complain. The only way you can show that Last Jedi or Captain Marvel is less controversial than most people think it is by showing the same people using multiple accounts or people hacking and using bots. Those are your only intellectually honest or mathematically coherent ways to demonstrate this thing. And if all your arguments are going to boil down to guilt by association, abstract conspiratorial connections, and moralistic woo, then I'm going to be entirely justified in saying that no one under the sun gives a fuck about your moralistic woo. Provide the receipts or GTFO. Them's are the rules. Moving on.
Alright, so here's the new part. Other ways hate can spread. Finally, hate analysis radicalization can spread just by simply retweeting accounts associated with alt-right spaces or posting videos from alt-right spaces without realizing. For example, in December 2020, Star Wars actor Mark Hamill unknowingly linked to a video by Echo Base Network's alt-right YouTube account. In the tweet, Hamill referred to the YouTubers, as well as some alt-right YouTubers who were jubilant over the return of Luke Skywalker in the finale of The Mandalorian second season. True thing.
Again, you don't know what the word alt-right means, and the actual diagnosable alt-right is a non-entity, politically speaking, and or a literal goddamn joke amongst people. Because the only reason why anyone has even heard of the alt-right, has only ever heard of people like Richard Spencer or J.F. Gariepy, is because the establishment prepared for a Nazi fight, and the only thing approaching a Nazi that showed up was Richard Spencer and J.F. Gariepy, i.e., a lispy trust fund bro in a polo shirt with a store-bought tiki torch, and a Frenchman with degenerate sexual fetishes. Those are the only two Nazi adjacent fuckers in the even loosely related to the anti-SJW movement that actually showed up to the fight. But because the establishment prepared for a Nazi fight, they will take they will take those incredibly hilariously incompetent punters and big them up like they're the most important thing under the sun. But as it happens, none or almost none of the people you have cited throughout this article have anything whatsoever to do with the alt-right and only look like they're tangentially related to the alt-right in your framework because you operate with straw men and with guilt by association and conflations going on that do not occur in the grassroots places that these things happen. The only reason you assume the most negative predilections among these sets is because you assume that anyone who disagrees with social justice must be de facto immoral in some sense, which is simply not the case. Moving on.
The host of Echo Base Network was on his Parler account a month before Hamill's tweet spreading dangerous conspiracy theories that the United States election had been rigged.
What?
What? I don't. Not. How's that relevant?
Read that again, because one, you came off as very muffled there, and two, I just don't know how he got from there to there.
Okay, the host of Echo Base Network was on his Parler account a month before Hamill's tweet spreading dangerous conspiracy theories that the United States election had been rigged.
Okay, so again, you are presupposing conspiracy theory where there is none, and you are using that conspiracy theory that you conflated and presupposed as a justification why a completely different set of beliefs is therefore wrong. It doesn't matter if the worst of the worst person says a true thing, it will still be true. If the Führer says the sky is blue, the sky will still be blue, yeah. If the Führer says vegetarianism is good and we should treat dogs well, that doesn't mean that we should gas all of the vegetarians and all of the dog lovers just to prove the Führer wrong. And I'm using the word the Führer mostly because, you know, if I even come off as sarcastically defending Hitler, the banhammer of YouTube shall fall. But if evil German mustache man says true thing will still be true thing. Do you see? And as it happens, that conspiracy theory that you're presupposing is also built on a bunch of guilt by associations, conflations, and straw men. So even your attempt at a smear is relying on your own framework and presupposing your own framework, which is not how one does proper research science. Oh, great academic fucker who took 3 years to learn about what was going on in 2017 and only just now figured out how it could be used to smear everything in 2021. Yep, moving on.
Each of these factors successfully creates an environment where the opinions of a small group of people from the majority and are allowed to dominate the conversation. When one forces tweets with, and I always hate these, I don't know these symbols. I always have trouble remembering which one.
What's it look like?
V on its side.
That would be a greater than.
Going to the left?
Well, okay. Which way? Yeah, which way is the V pointing? The open mouth pointing.
The open mouth is going to the left. I mean, that's supposed to mean greater than, right?
I believe so. It depends on it depends on what's on the other side of the symbol.
But we barely learned that shit in fucking math, okay? That shit never happened.
Oh yes, I forgot that not only did you fall victim to the American educational system, RIP actual intelligence, but also you came 4 years after me, so God only knows how they butchered the curriculum for
I just
you.
I never learned about this in like elementary school, but anywhere else I went to never had those.
Okay, this is a complete sidebar, but it's more interesting than what's going on here. Um, did you learn how to read an analog clock in school?
No,
You didn't learn how to read. You didn't learn how to read a clock with hands on it.
I learned that at home.
Okay, that's another failure of the
No,
educational system because
they never. Why would they teach us to read a clock?
well, they taught us how to do that
And
just to make sure we knew how to do it.
that kind of thing.
Um, how about cursive? Did you guys have to spend your early elementary school years learning cursive?
Yeah, but it never stuck with me. I always wrote print.
Well, yeah, I don't think it stuck with many people. I'm just saying I'm just mentally keeping tabs on the seemingly useless, easy shit that they taught us in early elementary school, and I'm wondering if they kept teaching it in school after I left it, or if my generation was the last to learn it. So yeah, so no to reading an analog clock, yes to cursive. Okay, so my youngest brother probably didn't learn either of those things then, because he is currently a junior in high school. He just started his junior year.
Some things are better taught at home. We shouldn't have schools teaching how to fold laundry, for instance.
Hmm.
Okay, I don't really have anything to say about it. Yes, I agree, but
I mean, yes, and I always found it redundant that we had to learn how to read an analog clock in school. That being said, um, it's still some it's still something that might occasionally need to be taught because not everyone is going to take the time to teach people in
I
at
learned on my
home,
own.
and or people aren't going to be smart enough to figure it out for themselves.
I will be honest. I prefer reading a digital clock, or just because it is somewhat easier.
I think everyone does for the most part. I'm just saying like I am 90% sure there are Zoomers who have not learned how to read an analog clock, and it depresses me.
Fair enough. And again, I'm in that weird generation of Zoomers, like that weird, like early Zoomers, like the first.
Yeah, you're an early Zoomer, whereas I think my youngest brother might actually be Gen Alpha, although I have to actually look to figure it out. He might just be a late he might just be a late stage Zoomer because
The quick,
I was a late stage millennial. My middle brother was a early Zoomer.
hold on. Where's the cutoff for Zoomers in Gen Alpha?
See that's the thing. I don't know. I know the millennial one is like 1996, 1997. Um, but I don't know where the transition is between Zoomers and Gen Alpha.
Presumably, Gen Gen Z are supposed to be like the parents to Gen Alpha, right?
Hmm?
Gen Gen Z are the parents to Gen Alpha. That is supposed to how it's technically supposed to work, right?
Well, millennials and some Zoomers are the parents to Gen Alpha.
I this generation bullshit is bullshit.
But my mom was a very late Gen Xer, and she had me when she was 17. And there's 6 years between me and my middle brother, and there's like 11 years between me and my youngest brother. So I don't know if he if they're I don't know if they're both Zoomers or if my youngest brother is in a very early Gen Alpha.
be honest, I don't remember a lot of what I learned in school. Like really thinking about it.
Because most of what they taught you in school is stuff you would never use or was bullshit.
I mean, to be fair, certain aspects of like mathematics could have helped me if I went into like construction jobs or something like that.
Hmm.
Like the
But
degree.
they don't often spend that much time on applied mathematics. They skip right to calc and they stick they uh they skip right to calc and trig and and that sort of shit. So I don't which is stuff you're only really going to need if you go into either engineering or math or if you become a mathematician.
Yeah, I really don't remember shit from any of my years in school.
I remember most stuff, but that's just because I have a fuck-tarded memory.
All right. Anyway, back to this. We not too much of
Hmm.
anything. Let me reread the whole thing of this. So I see.
Hmm.
Each of these factors successfully creates an environment where the opinions of a small group of people become the majority and are allowed to dominate the country. With one-fourth of the tweets with greater than 1,000 engagements mentioning The Last Jedi are discussing or mocking the hate against the film. The hate becomes the narrative over the actual value and achievement of, the, of that film. This is actually what people who organize this hate.
Here's the thing, though. Here's your problem. The grassroots voices of the fandom, the grassroots haters, are not elected by any sort of officialdom or any sort of academic process. Which means that if Geeks and Gamers or The Quartering or Gary from Neurotic or any of those other folks or Anglintine or me or we could go on, or even people like Sargon and Arch, if those people become popular, it's not because people are brainwashed into agreeing with them. It's because people gravitate towards people who are better at expressing, or at least more entertaining at expressing, the ideas that they already hold on some level. Now, granted, that can lead to some kind of cult of personality mentality, as much as often as not, I will call out people like Gary from Neurotic or The Quartering when they get shit wrong. I mean, see also the like 4 hours we spent bitching at Gary for saying all kinds of retarded shit about Multiverse of Madness that wasn't accurate. But being that as it may, the difference here is the small group of people who are said to be the arbiters of legitimacy you're describing is actually more accurate to the profession of the critical class than it is to the YouTuber. Because as I said, the YouTuber gains an audience because he says things that on some level resonate with people. Now, again, that can be taken too far, and people can become drones, and people can basically become, straw men who will literally just hate on everything. But if you're looking for a set of people who use the clout of officialdom to frame their minority opinion as the only correct opinion, you are more accurately going to find that among the critical class than you are among the people whose audiences select them for their own opinions. I.e., the relationship between the audience and the YouTuber is actually a lot more democratic than the audience and the critic, because the critic has degrees and academic and or political legitimacy and or some kind of corporation or news outlet behind them usually. And
So
that being the case, you can't draw an equivalency between the critic and the self-selected YouTuber audience, because the YouTuber audience categorically must resonate with someone in order to become a YouTuber in the first place. The critic needs resonate with no one except for academia in order to gain the legitimacy that they gain. So if anything, I would make the argument that this is a small proportion of people and therefore their opinions are less valid. That argument applies more so to the academically and corporate endorsed critic class than it does to the self-selected YouTubers, because the self-selected YouTuber can actually point at his audience, can actually interact with his audience, whereas the critic very much abstains from interacting with their audience unless their audience are a bunch of academic aristocrats. Moving on.
If we spend our time discussing why a film is so hated, we don't stop to discuss why the film is so important to the progression in culture these organized alt-right fan groups are terrified of. And worse, we fall into the trap of making alt-right hate the story, which only increases the effectiveness of the alt-right radicalization pipeline. Sorry if you think that.
Once more, you are not accurately using the term alt-right. The term you are using, the alt-right term you are using, refers to a very narrow, very specific, very irrelevant set of people who frankly are regarded as idiots among the grassroots. People like J.F. Gariepy and Richard Spencer are rightfully mocked, and I will continue to rightfully mock them, because they are basically a bunch of rich twats who basically are wannabe childish wannabe cartoon supervillains, so embarrassing that Dr. Draken, Dr. Doofenshmirtz, and Dr. Evil would all mutually decide to beat them up and take their lunch money. But you're using the term alt-right to mean, it seems, anti-SAW. And yeah, no, those two things aren't related. And the only reason you're able to conflate them is because you're presupposing a philosophical connection between them that simply is not there. And very often will be actively refuted, but you ignore the active reputation. Like, for example, when Six Hexenhammer, who is an anti-SAW libertarian dude, Sargon of Akkad, who at that point was basically the internet's poster child for classical liberalism, and Richard Spencer are all on a live stream hosted by Chris Warski, or it might have been Andy Warski, but regardless, one of the Warskis, because it was an internet blood sport thing. When those three people get together, 9 times out of 10, it is so the libertarians represented by Styx and the classical liberals at that point represented by Sargon can laugh at, mock, and deride everything Richard Spencer believes to his face. No amount of radicalization is going to occur there, because the only reason why the token alt-rightist is there is to be the punching bag. Granted, because the average alt-righter has the self-awareness of a clump of wet clay, he didn't realize that that's why he was there. But we, as the audience, all very easily understood that Richard Spencer was there basically to be mocked by the Warskis, by Sargon, and of course by Styx. And so much better, for he is basically a unself-aware twit who LARPs as a revolutionary while being the polo shirt wearing, lacrosse playing frat dude that we all hated that had a trust fund in college.
I don't know.
Moving on.
Johnny Turtle, am I the only one who thought for the longest time that it was alt as an ultra right, not alt as an alternative right?
Sorry, Dragon Turtle, but in this case, yes. I think you are the only person who has ever made that mistake.
To be fair,
at the very least, you are the only person who has made that mistake that has come to my attention. I don't mean to be a dick, but you asked the question, and that appears to be the answer.
Not that I heard alt-right, but I never really got a real answer on what it is. So I was always curious on what it was, like what was it described.
Basically back in 2016, 2017, the anti-SJW movement, otherwise known as the skeptic community, were beating the shit out of feminism because feminism was stupid and so on and so forth. But there was a subset of people, or actually no, I can explain this better. Amongst the anti-SJWs of the time, there was the sentiment no one should be playing identity politics. No, the entire framework of intersectionality is bullshit. And that was the majority opinion of the skeptic community. There was, however, a small subset of people who, while professing that in theory, in principle, began to slowly but surely create a special pleading bubble for themselves whereby all identity politics was bad except for those that related to the politics of rich white bastards, specifically rich white men, which basically resulted in there being a split between the skeptic community and the newly formed alt-right, who are basically softcore, more meme-savvy white nationalists, again, led mostly by people like Edgy Spinks, J.F. Garapi, and Richard Spencer. And pretty much since the alt-right separated itself from the skeptic community, everyone in the skeptic community and several people outside of the skeptic community on the online space mocked and derided the alt-right for being morons. For indeed they were morons.
Mm-hmm.
And then the mainstream media saw the term alt-right and basically used it as a term to tar all people who they presupposed must be conservative because they were opposing SJWs, and therefore the mainstream media started using it as the term for anyone who disagrees with the mainstream narrative who we think might be conservative, regardless of whether they actually are conservative or not. That's the history of the alt-right as a term, mostly.
Okay. I mean, by the way, I don't understand the shit. I mean, either way, I don't really feel shit because I feel like it's stupid either way.
Mm-hmm.
But I at least have better context now. So thank you for that.
You would think it would be easy for someone with academic credentials to learn what I just explained in 2 minutes. But no, apparently not. Apparently it has sailed completely over their heads, because why would we actually do research on a thing we're talking about when we can just morally arbitrate about shit that we made up in our own heads? Moving on.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Next thing. The generational cost of hate. The alt-right successful political attack against progressive culture. Fuck that progressive culture. I'm really not progressive, let's be honest. By the time the sequel trilogy is about to come to a close in December 2019, the only retaliation against the organized racist and sexist barrage against it has been a few tweets and a few articles crying out against hateful trolls and nexus. Most of this is left to reverberate within the echo chamber of Twitter, and any real action needed against the rising alt-right radicalization of control them is not even a thought.
The alt-right is, and always hopefully shall be, a childish, dickheaded joke amongst the grassroots of the internet, and is only taken seriously by the mainstream media because, god damn it, they wanted Nazis to fight, and so they went looking for them. But as it happens, the motivation for opposing social justice, in most cases, has nothing to do with racism, sexism, or anything else. Because you see, and I think I've gone through this in the course of this article before, but because you see, BLM is not synonymous with the black community, and in furthermore, blackness in the academic sense does not map on to people with black skin. Feminism is not equivalent to women's rights, or women's interests. And most people in the anti-SJW sphere, especially back in the old days to which you were referring here, because it took you 4 years to figure out what people were saying in 2017, or at the very least it took you that long to figure out where that fits in your framework. But in any case, most people who opposed social justice opposed it because they were Gen Xers and early millennials who remembered the bygone days of the TradCon movement and their authoritarian family values, and therefore begat a very irreverent streak that led to things like the goth movement and the punk movement. Unfortunately for you, however, while there are some people who were goths and punks who don't have any principles and therefore are fine with being irreverent towards traditionalists, but woe betide anyone who is irreverent about their moralism, there are, though, some people who were consistent in their opposition to moralism and their preference for irreverence in the face of moralism. And those people, in large part, opposed social justice on that basis. And I will say, for my example, that's definitely where I fall. I don't like moralism, period. Whether it be TradCon family values moralism or academic social justice moralism. I do not like moralism. I do not like authoritarian use of morality in the public sphere, period. And my preference is for the 90s and early 2000s virtue of irreverence. And I don't um discriminate as to who I hold to that standard. I will hold the social justice loving rainbow haired Karens to the standard of fuck your moralism, irreverence is king, just as much as I ever did the pearl clutching Helen Lovejoys of the world. Because I don't like hyper evangelical Christian family values, but nor do I like critical theory infused neo Hegelian frameworks like social justice. And no, it doesn't matter that one of these is religious and the other one is secular. If you are being moralistic, if you insist on enforcing your morality in the public sphere at the point of social shame and social censure, then you will be told by me to fuck right off. And then I will use that irreverence that I learned in the 90s and never forgot, because it became a formative principle in my personal schema, to mock you mercilessly and deride your stupidity as much as I possibly can. Just like the Four Horsemen of New Atheism bitch slapped the shit out of evangelical family values back in the day. People like Sargon of Akkad and the Amazing Atheist, although he would probably disavow that now, and the the Bearings of the world, the Dr. Random McCanns, etc. They especially during like 2016, 2017, held social justice moralism to exactly the same standard that Hitchens, Dawkins, Dennett, and Harris used to hold evangelical family values moralism. And you know what? The arguments seem to be relatively the same because the principle is relatively the same. It doesn't matter what terminology you change the MacGuffin to. Moralism is still moralism, and moralism can get fucked. Moving on.
Victor of the war on culture being waged from the depths of designated hate groups in top YouTube videos is now left to be decided by Lucasfilm, Disney, and Bad Robot. This came out in 2021. Rise of Skywalker came out in 2019, right?
I don't really have anything to add other than your first impulse appears to have been, let's mock the stupid people who we consider to be invalid. And when that didn't work because you realized on some level that you didn't have the moral high ground, you're now moving towards they're not silly and write-offable, they're dangerous. It never even occurs to you that you might be in the wrong or that they might have a point. And that is why you will always fail, because if you try to counter irreverence and self-awareness with moralism and prudishness, history has shown you will probably lose. Granted, the same people will the same principle applies to the people who lose their way somewhere along the way, cough cough Sargon, and move from 90s style Gen X irreverence to actually traditionalism might have had a point. But playing one dragon at a time here, and social justice is currently the bigger threat. And I can easily hold both the traditionalist and the feminist to the same standard until they both stop being moralistic cunts.
This salon, moving on.
Say that again.
Moving
None
on?
of that got through.
Moving on. Are we moving on?
Yeah, moving on.
Okay.
Go ahead.
This allows to ask of companies who likely have little understanding of what is happening within their own fan base and whose way of conducting business is great decisions for decades has never had to consider things like coordinated aggression from white supremacists and anti-feminists. And so the ending of this little known battle of cultural progress versus deterioration was, in hindsight, inevitable.
Sweetheart, I hate to burst this particular. Actually, no, I love bursting this particular bubble, especially after like 10 episodes.
Hold on. Let me finish that because I feel like I stopped at kind of the middle of it. So.
Okay.
In the end, the alt-right attack on Star Wars was successful, carrying with it considerable damage for creatives involved and for the myth of an entire generation that became unknowingly squandered to hate. Okay, there you go.
Okay, one, people are not blank slates because, again, YouTubers are successful because they gain an audience, and they gain an audience because people generally agree with them. Two, the attack against Star Wars was first perpetrated by people like Kathleen Kennedy, and the defiance of people like Kathleen Kennedy is what you're referring to. Number three, the people doing the defying of your moral standard are not alt-right, as I have gone over many times at this point. And number four, you claim that the biggest problem for these companies is that they have very little understanding of what is going on. That is the first arguably true thing you have said in almost 4,000 words. However, I hate to burst this particular bubble for you. Actually, no, I love bursting this particular bubble for you, especially after 10 hours of this nonsense. You, sir, are not helping. You may have a more elaborate academic woo-woo framework to operate within, and that may seem more intellectual and more impressive to people who have absolutely no idea what's going on, but you are actually, unironically, providing misinformation here, because nothing you have said, or damn near as nothing to you have said, throughout this entire article, has been anything but hysterical moralizing and failed pseudo-intellectual misappropriation of numbers. So, no, you are not helping. And here's the thing. Actually, when all is said and done, a void of understanding is actually less dangerous than misunderstanding. Because there are some people who will look at you, see all your fancy degrees, see the paragraphs upon paragraphs of academic jargon, see your bastardization of statistics, and think that you must know what the fuck you're talking about. The problem is that the logical framework in which you are operating is FUBAR, and therefore no amount of numbers, no amount of academic jargon, no amount of woo is going to lead you to a actual rational place or even a non-hysterical place. Because you can put true numbers into a faulty equation setup all you want, but as long as the logical underpinnings of your framework are FUBAR, no sensible conclusions will be gotten out of that equation. Just like you can put bad numbers into a good equation and get the wrong answer, you can also put good numbers into a false equation and get the wrong answer. Which is why, even prior to understanding empirical reality, you must first be operating on a charitable, humane, and rational framework. If you can't manage to do those three things, then you might as well pack up your bags and quit the statistics game altogether, because no amount of good numbers you put into that faulty equation will give you anything but a wrong answer, and a hysterically moralistic answer at that. Moving on.
What's the whole? That was literally, I guess you could say, chapters of one thing. So I don't know if you just want to stop here and move on.
How much further do we have to go? Because we must be nearing the end, surely. We must be nearing the end.
A quarter, I think, but
let's at least start the next section.
Okay.
I want to feel like we made progress somewhere.
Okay. Dragon Turtle says that expression is very offensive to dragons. You are so getting attention. Roll. Roberto Love explaining the dragon thing.
What did I say relating to dragons?
I don't. I'll be honest, I don't remember.
I don't recall saying anything related to dragons. Or did he say something relating to dragons?
No, you did.
Okay, Dragon Turtle, neither of us remembers what I may have said, so please refresh me.
So, this new.
Because I demand the right to at least know why I'm getting canceled, damn it.
Another dragon display or something like that.
Oh, I see. Okay, yes, fair enough. I suppose I did perpetuate a Dragonocide, so bad me. Boot to my own head. Anyway. Yes, next bit.
The target is progressive and diverse creatives. The Cameron Gate demonstrated no caustic battle against culture, targeting simply the culture. There is always a human cost attack. Similar attacks into the creatives involved themselves with sequel to various degrees, including a film director, 2 authors, a show, 3 actors, and an executive. This is not exhaustive. This was exhaustive. A new creator, or any woman in particular, in a creative role that is hired by Lucasfilm, who is likely to create content alt-right groups who is antithetical to traditional white Christian culture, will become a target. Okay. That's a lot.
Okay, yes. Okay. Beginning. When you say progressive, I assume you mean social justice oriented. Because, again, I don't want to play the identitarian card, but if we're playing the identitarian game, I suppose I have to play the identitarian card. I am a gay, crippled, religious minority of a person who also supported Bernie Sanders both times he was running for election, and my second and third choices were Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard. So, being politically progressive is not what you mean. You specifically mean someone in favor of the ideology of social justice. And this is where I bitch slap you for making yet another clusterfuck of conclusions that you made. Because being progressive is not related to being diverse. Okay? Feminism doesn't speak for women, BLM doesn't speak for black people, critical queer theory doesn't speak for gay people. Okay? You need to get this through your head, all of you, all the people who supported this guy, all the people who endorsed this guy, all the people who educated this guy, all the people who would then agree with this article and or this person. Progressivism, the political ideology, or more accurately social justice, because again, you can even be politically progressive without having anything to do with morality or moralism. Okay. Um you can be a left winger and still be an anti-SJW. So what you mean is social justice. And social justice does not speak for people who are lowercase d diverse. And your need to turn lowercase d diverse into uppercase d diverse is exactly the problem. There are women who are not feminists. There are black people who do not like BLM. There are gay people who absolutely despise critical queer theory. Ahai. And so on and so on and so forth. This is your biggest problem. You assume by default that a person must adhere to an ideology or a framework or a platonic hive mind, however you want to put it, in order to be a valid member of that community. And yeah, no one gives a fuck about female directors. What we have a problem with are ideologically feminist directors. Nobody gives a shit about black directors. But when they start harping on about BLM talking points, that is the moment when we go scorched earth on them. And nobody gives a fuck about gay actors or directors or whatever, or almost no one cares about those things. What we care about is when they go from live how you want to live, be whoever you are going to be, to we will hashtag convert your children. No, thank you. Moving on.
Social Gaming, hello. At which guy?
We're taking yet another stab at another section of the Rewriting Ripley article. The Star Wars was infiltrated by the alt-right article from around 2021. The one we've been slowly chipping pieces off for like 2 or 3 years now. That one. The guy who basically wrote a dissertation trying to explain in 2021 what the fuck was happening in the fandom community in 2017 and getting everything wrong,
Okay.
as such things are wont to do.
It's stupid, Zoga. Yeah.
There's an entire playlist on this channel called the Rewriting Ripley article playlist. Go there and it will explain itself.
Be warned, we spent about the first one, which is 107 on that. We spent about like 3-4 hours on that. That was the worst mistake of our lives. And
yeah.
we spent about an hour on each. So
yeah, after the first segment, when we spent almost the entire show on the damn thing, we decided to limit ourselves to an hour of coverage each interval.
Hour and a half, but.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm going to read this last part, and then we are going to call it for this article and just move on.
Mm-hmm.
A few of these attacks we have already discussed, including the racist attack against Boyega in 2015, the attack on Kathleen Kennedy, which have also included death threats by alt-right YouTubers. Okay, so I have a few things to say, mainly about the John Boyega.
Mm-hmm.
No, not unfortunately, no, guys. No, I'm not Ripley Evans from the Alien franchise. No, it's a website called Rewriting Ripley.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the actual topic. It's the website that thing was posted on.
Yeah. It's not Ripley, so it's Ridley, Daisy Ridley.
Mm-hmm.
But back to this, the John Boyega thing. Most people just wanted him. One fantastic actor. The guy deserves so much more than ever what he's gotten.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone was more or less bummed that he was kind of getting shafted constantly.
Yeah, a lot of people wanted him to be the main character rather than Ray.
Just because he has such, no offense to Daisy Ridley or Ray. They kind of conflated a bit in the movies, mind you, but
mm-hmm.
I'll be honest.
She's not a compelling character at
Um,
all.
it's weird. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think the issue is it's the fact that she's never given clear, either both clear motivation or she's like Korra, some Legend of Korra kind of.
Yes,
The
they're very much cut from the same cloth.
the concepts are there. I just don't think they get either expanded on or.
Okay, let me rephrase. As written, she is not a compelling character.
Yeah,
That
okay,
doesn't mean she couldn't be. It just means that she is not.
right, but yeah, thank you. So there is no bad characters. There is only poorly written ones. Yeah, that's my entire philosophy on storytelling.
That is correct. But
Um,
I was referring to the Ridley as we have her, not the Rey as we have her, not the Rey as she could be.
yeah,
Because
okay.
I still maintain that having the granddaughter of Palpatine be the good character, and having the granddaughter of or the grandson of um
Vader.
or yeah, the grandson of Luke Skywalker, um or I guess the
And,
nephew of Luke Skywalker be the villain, that could have worked if they had actually played it right,
yeah,
but they didn't.
yeah. And again, Boyega, fantastic actor, honestly deserves to be the main character just because he put a lot more. I think like there was a lot more going for Finn throughout the series than there was for Ray. Like
Yeah,
he had more personal stakes in terms of like the events of the story.
it was also a new angle on the story because we had never really spent that much time in the movies focusing on the post-clone stormtroopers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But screw that, I guess, because we have to feminist.
Right.
Um, but
Um,
but but in any case, back to the racism accusation for a minute, because you know who was infinitely more racist to John Boyega, who you are not under any circumstances calling out in this? That would be the organization known as the CCP, otherwise known as the current government of China, not to be confused with Taiwan, who is the legitimate government of China. But that's neither here nor there. But Disney went out of their way to decentralize and de-emphasize Finn in all the marketing materials of both The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. And yet they are not guilty of the charge of racism, and the alleged alt-right, which again, you're misusing that term like a motherfucker, um, but the alleged alt-right is guilty of racism, even though large swaths of what would become the fandom menace kind of almost to a man insist that Finn was a more compelling character than Rey, and hate Rey while enjoying Finn.
I will say a stormtrooper becoming sorry, a little side thing here, but a stormtrooper becoming a Jedi or Force user isn't new to the Star Wars universe because there's like a video game, I can't remember what it's called, that had Kyle Katarn, who was a stormtrooper became a Jedi. I think it's Star Wars Dark Forces. If anyone who knows that, please feel free to correct me because, again, unless I am a Star Wars fan, I am still learning more. I'm still learning about a lot of things from like the expanded universe. But in mainstream, at least, mainstream life, Finn could have been had again. He had a lot more going. You know.
By the way, I haven't seen Ahsoka yet, but I do know that they finally brought a Night Sister into live action, and I couldn't be happier with just that concept. I don't know how they handled her, so they might have handled her shittily, but they brought a Night Sister into live action, and I'm happy with at least the concept of that. I may regret that later, but I'm happy that they finally acknowledged the Night Sisters in live action. It's been a long time coming. Someone please give me a prequel series so we can get Mother Talzin, please. Hmm?
Okay, isn't Mother Talzin still around? Like as a ghost thing?
I see they keep flip-flopping on it because she's air quotes died like 3 separate times now, and they keep oh you thought you thought I was gone, you thought I was gone, wahaha. They keep doing that to her. So
Right.
frankly, I'm happy with Mother Talzin continuing to exist in perpetuity because Mother Talzin is my favorite expanded universe character, and I'm so glad that Filoni used her in the Clone Wars series, so they had to keep her and the other Night Sisters because they were planning on decanonizing the Night Sisters and Dathomir as the witch planet entirely. And no, you will not be doing that. You would be taking that up with my ass if you try to do that.
Right. Uh, Giant brings up you and your fetish for a live action.
Hmm?
Giant makes the joke of you and your fetish for live action.
I'm sorry, but it is more legitimate when it's in the actual canon of live action than when it's animated, because the animation will always be, well, frankly, Clone Wars, the TV show, is the best thing that happened in the prequel timeline.
Mm-hmm.
It will still be seen as a spin-off or a sidebar in relation to live action shit. So
Well,
I'm happy. I'm happy to see a Night Sister in live action. Granted, I would have been happy if it were Mother Talzin, because if it were Mother Talzin, she would go full Night Sister, and I want to see what her spells look like in live action, because I want to see what the Dathomir and Ichor looks like in live action. God damn it!
I, it's weird. I feel like I'm in kind of both camps here. Like I like live action, I like animation. Just when they're done well. I think overall, I think it's great when it's done well. That's what we prefer the most, either in live action or animation. Right?
Yes, Ahsoka. I know, but in terms of its overall impact on the plot, Clone Wars will always be seen as a spinoff, even if it was a spinoff that was better than both episodes 1 and 2. I will make an argument for episode 3 though, because episode 3 was actually like this is sidebar again, but something I've noticed about Star Wars, every trilogy has one really, really amazing or at least really, really good movie, and the other two are mostly forgettable. And I know that's heresy, but New Hope and Return of the Jedi were rather forgettable. Empire's amazing. Um,
Um,
Episodes 1 and 2 were varying degrees of forgettable. Episode 3 is pretty damn good. And most of the actual trilogy of the sequel trilogy is forgettable, but Rogue One is pretty damn good. So it does seem to be a thing where, like, in every Star Wars trilogy there will be one fucking amazing movie and then a couple forgettable ones.
Okay, so before we move on to the next thing, which is Dalton's thing, I actually want to make mention of this. So I'm sure everyone here knows what Channel Awesome is, right?
Yes.
And I'm regarding to Dragon's Turtle comment about wanting Finn to actually matter. Yeah. They have this show or segment or something. I don't know what you call it, of Channel Awesome, like called Fanscription, where it's basically like fan fiction rewrite of certain things. And they've done one where Finn was the main character in the sequel trilogy. And if you want Dragon Kill, I can send that to you, like, or just post it in Discord or something.
He needs you'll have to wait because I'm in the process of critic pilling Dragon Turtle, so let him get caught up on the lore of Channel Awesome before you introduce him to the post co-op era, because fanscription didn't start until after Channel Awesome basically became a solely Doug and Rob Walker thing, and basically the entire edifice of the actual organization of Channel Awesome basically died. So
enough.
so so, so wait for Dragon Turtle to know the awesomeness of what was before you show him the post the post the post team up era of Channel Awesome.
To be fair, I actually really enjoy Fantastic Noir. It's actually kind of the only thing I watch with Channel Awesome is because it's actually really well made stuff. And like legitimately, I really wish we could download those movies. And like
I still watch the Nostalgia Critic, and I really like the stuff that Walter does. Like have you seen his Batman stuff?
I've seen it. I've seen it like on my recommended feed, but I'll be honest, man. Those kind of critic channels, I've never really like with like car or something. I've never like gotten into them. Like I know they're entertaining. I've seen some things of them.
Yeah, you're too young. You're too young to remember the good old days when they were the biggest thing on the internet.
Right. Full honesty, like I've seen clips of their stuff and I do find them entertaining. I'm just like, I don't know. I'm watching other stuff.
By the time you knew what Channel Awesome was, I'm sure the era of the lore was gone.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I made sure, both because Dragon Turtle is like me and kind of a lore nut, but also because it's probably the best way to get into Channel Awesome. I made sure to show Dragon Turtle the lore stuff first.
Okay.
Because I'm sick of people bashing on the lore. The lore of Channel Awesome is good, and people need to get the fuck over themselves.
Anyway, Joey.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to point this out. I've actually everything else besides this article that we're covering right now. I have actually. It's one of the very few times where I actually have more talk about.
Yes, Brainstormer has the majority of the con today.
Yeah, but this is definitely gone from the Mary Sue.
Yep, we're doing some nostalgia baiting of our own. First the rewriting Ripley article, and now the Mary Sue.
Okay, so this is from Mercy.com. This Baldur's Gate 3 plot is unable to shake harmful friendship by Alyssa Shotwell. Published August 18th, 2020.
Which I don't think we've ever covered Melissa before.
No, Alyssa. Not Melissa.
Oh. Okay. Well, I don't think we've covered her before. I know we've covered Princess Weeks. I know we've covered. There's another person that we've covered a couple of times that usually talks about pagan shit.
I know what you're talking and what's her name?
And I know we've covered and the reoccurring antagonist of the show is probably Rachel Leachman because she usually says the stupidest shit.
I can't remember her name, which is weird because I know the stuff we talked about with her. Like,
yeah, she did the Frozen is secretly a pagan movie or whatever article.
Was that Rachel? No, I don't.
No, that wasn't Rachel. That was she was a third writer. I don't think we had ever covered before we did that.
Right. Okay. Anyway, Kelly.
Yep.
Okay. Between my 65 hours in early access and 70 hours since release, all still on Act 1. God, that's a long ass story. I'm clearly a big fan of Baldur's Gate 3. It's ridiculously flexible for my playstyle. The stories are intriguing and the consequences feel real. I'll have to take the word of all the regular RPG players about how boundary pushing this is. As a person who doesn't really play this genre, all I know is that it's a lot of fun everywhere. Still, as a piece of art, it has its issues. Okay, so before you go, Dom, I do want to mention that I've never really played an RPG. The closest I've played is DC Universe Online. And I never really got far in that game.
I mean, Baldur's Gate looks good. I haven't gotten the opportunity to play it yet, though.
I'll be honest with you. Most games today don't really intrigue me much. So.
Like I often say when this comes up, I'm more of a retro gamer. I like my platformers. I like my side scrollers. I like the stuff that has like the retro vibe. Like the last thing I played and like really enjoyed was Cuphead. Although I do also play games on my phone, and yes, I know that's heresy and yada yada yada, but I don't play the like Candy Crush style like casual woman games, for lack of a better word. Right now, I'm currently sitting at level 76 on Marvel Strike Force because that game is pretty cool, and I'm currently rediscovering my love for Yu-Gi-Oh all over again by playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links after having rewatched the anime on Tubi recently. So those are the two games that I spend the most time on my phone. Although I do occasionally use The Sims. Shush, all of you.
Okay.
And just so anyone is aware, I'm currently on stage 12 of level 31 in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, if anyone's curious. And I actually
um,
I actually have I actually have unlocked 2 of the 3 Egyptian god cards and a whole bunch of the Toon cards and also Toon World. So I'm relatively happy.
okay. Intro for me. Well, actually, okay, hold on, guys. So I'll read that in a second. Don, I'm sorry, I cut you off on uh, what were you going to say? That's the first thing.
Nothing. I was just bragging about my Yu-Gi-Oh cards that I've unlocked.
Okay. Okay, so Grand Tour for me, if the universe doesn't pull me in specifically, then it's things like strategy games, factory builders, colony managers, etc. Not that I'm any good, but I like them.
Admittedly, I do get more into the lore of things than I do the actual gameplay, mostly because I have hand-eye coordination issues.
Yeah, actually, that's kind of the same thing too. Like I'm a big fan of Cyberpunk 2077, although I barely played the game and I mostly watched stuff about the lore and stuff and like got into that. Pretty cool. Also, what do you do in the Sims? Is it just a sandbox?
It's similar to like Second Life and things. You design characters, and then have them interact with each other, and then you basically build an ideal life for them.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, the second character I ever made was my ideal boyfriend. Shut up. And yes, I did have him wind up with my self-insert character. Also, shut up. I can feel Brainstormer smirking from here.
I am. Okay. Moving on. Um, actually, recently I've gone into like the Remedy universe, like Control, Alan Wake, Max Payne. Like specifically the lore of the stuff because it's super interesting and it's like super in depth.
Mm.
Like it touches on a lot of interesting stuff. Again, I've never played those games at all, so
Mm.
yeah. Mostly, I'm a big lore like when it comes to games because like games are actually put a lot more effort into like good games put a lot more effort into like the world building and stuff.
I mean for fuck's sake, one of the best animes to be released recently was the Castlevania Netflix anime, and they didn't make up like any of that lore. They just like retooled stuff that was actually from the games. Granted, they threw together Dracula's Curse of Darkness, and what was the one that first introduced Alucard? I can't remember. Something Night.
Symphony of the Night.
Thank
Was
you,
that
Symphony of the Night.
was that
Yeah, it was a combination of those 3 things, but damned if it wasn't amazing. And I will forever simp for the Castlevania anime. That is how you do a video game adaptation, folks. That is how you do it.
sexy polygon? Sorry, but had to say it. Had to. That's technical. Anyway, moving on.
Yes. The
Okay.
models are more realistic than polygons, Dragon Turtle. Shush.
Since my first playthrough, one major issue and a side plot has disrupted my ability to sing this game's praises without a caveat. Of course. That's the ah, implementation. Implement. Implementation of common fantasy tropes steeped in misogyny and anti-Semitism.
And just like that, you're about to step into my wheelhouse, darling.
Okay, so before, I do want to obviously to read her thing because I don't think we don't have much to say yet.
Yeah, no, I don't really. I mean, it is unfortunate for her that she can't put her morality away for 5 minutes and just enjoy something unvarnishedly, especially given how far she's going to have to reach to make this problematic. But
Again, granted, we have actually I don't even think that was the intention of the game creators either way. So, but just so everyone
not that I particularly care about authorial intent, as everyone knows at this point. I find themes and authorial intent to be modern affectations that need to go get fucked. But yeah.
Right. But my point being is, I really doubt game creators would.
No, they definitely didn't. They definitely didn't intend to be racist, and certainly not. I mean, for fuck's sake, they're fucking Californians in the current year, plus 7. They don't like. I don't. What the? How the hell they or are we on current year plus 9? Because I know the current year meme began in 2015, so that would be current year plus 15 to 23 is 9, I think. No. Five minus 12 is 7 to 13 would be. Oh shit, we lost Brainstormer. But yeah, we're in current year plus 9, I'm thinking. So yeah, he's a Californian in current year plus 9. I very much doubt he tried to be misogynistic or anti-Semitic. In fact, I think he pathologically resisted being either of those two things, to the point that it actually nerfed the storytelling, probably. I assume Brainstormer's internet crapped out, and he will return as soon as he gets his internet fixed. We don't need to go to the Lost and Found Dragon Turtle. And now we wait for the Brainstormer. Oh shit. I almost exited out of my own tab. That would have been annoying. That would have literally left you guys with dead air, which is forbidden on the internet. You will not produce the dead air, or you will be ratioed to hell in the comments. This is the rule. No, he probably just has to reboot his computer again. It depends on how befucked his modem is. He's not having to like rebuild the entire modem or something. you yeah you do not have permission to produce the dead air. You are a YouTuber. YouTuber makes the content. If you don't make the content, we will stick you with the YouTube mines. Jawohl. You will produce the content, and if you don't produce the content, you will be ratioed within an inch of your internet life. Yeah, no, he's not. He's not neutering the internet, Dragon Turtle. We leave that to the YouTube censors and everyone but Elon Musk, apparently. And it just now occurred to me that if we actually had a larger, more substantive audience, that probably would have been enough to get me canceled. But fortunately, we as yet don't have a large enough audience. And by the time we do have a large enough audience, they won't be able to touch us. So, neener, neener, neener. Okay, he's back.
Okay, I'm back. Yeah, okay. Yeah, my internet glitched out.
Yeah, I figured.
What I missed?
Nothing. Just me mocking YouTube's attitude towards dead air by doing a mid-century German impression.
Uh-huh.
And Dragon Turtle made a joke about you fixing your modem like it was a dog or a cat. And then I made a joke about YouTube censorship that would probably get us censored if we had a larger audience, but fortunately we don't yet.
Continue or
Yes, continue.
okay. Spoilers for a boss fight in Sunlight Wetlands. Second Baldur's Gate 3. Unless they complete the Goblin Camp first, players will find their first major boss fight in Sunlit Wetlands. After passing some roll checks and or the fight with the strange animals in the biome, the setting transforms into an acrid swamp. If earlier conversations or bodies didn't reveal Auntie's Ethel wasn't what she seemed, this large-scale illusion in her home does. Turns out she's been making deals with wretched people and screwing them over for her own gain. The most recent victim's family, Demir and George, are desperately trying to rescue their sister in Marina. When you find out why, it goes downhill so fast. I seriously kept telling myself, maybe more context will make this not what it appears. Nope, after exploring the dialogue tree across 3 playthroughs, my fear was confirmed.
Say that again?
Did I go?
It was muffled towards the end of the sentence.
Okay. When you find out why, it goes downhill so fast. I seriously kept telling myself maybe more context will make this not what it appears. Nope, after exploring the dialogue tree across 3 playthroughs, my fear was confirmed. I said nothing to say that.
Um, I, I guess without the context of what her fear was, we don't really have much to add. So let's get into what she actually, how she got from Baldur's Gate to anti-Semitism and misogyny somehow.
Yeah. Blood libel and fantasy again. After losing her lover and father to their future child, Marina works out a deal with Ethel. Ethel, a witch who transforms into a swamp-like hag, will resurrect Connor in exchange for Marina's child, who she'll keep. Ethel reveals plans to eat the child to make a hag daughter. This plot of a magical person who shares features with historically anti-Semitic caricatures of Jewish people, creating or coercing someone to give up a child that will be consumed in some way sounds familiar because it is.
Okay, and just like that, we're right smack in the middle of my wheelhouse. Okay, darling, here's the thing. The anti-Semitic trope comes from the witch trope, not the other way around. The idea, okay, has to do with the medieval preconceptions of witches, and also to some extent with physiognomy. Because you see, in the Middle Ages, there was an idea, again, referred to in modern context as physiognomy, that said evil people look ugly because the evil that they do or think shows on their face eventually. That being said, the reason why witches in the Middle Ages were thought to eat children is because they were thought to be in league with the devil. And when Jews made their way into the western parts of Europe, rather than the witch trope being informed by the Jewish trope, the negative stereotypes of Jewish people were borrowed from the witch trope because Jews were, of course, part of another religion. And from the medieval Christian mindset, being part of another religion is very similar to being a devil worshiper, especially because Jewish people had things like Kabbalah and other Jewish magic systems that they did they thought tied into witchcraft, and thus the witch trope became transplanted onto the Jewish trope, and both of them were subject to this thing called physiognomy. That's why witches typically in medieval art look like crones. It's both because, you know, witches were tended to be thought to be older people, but also because of physiognomy, the idea that the evil someone has in their soul would show on their face eventually. And that's also where you get the Jewish trope of the long crooked nose and so on. Not because someone created a Jewish trope or a Jewish archetype and then transplanted onto the witch, but because the other way around. They had a negative stereotype of the witch relating to how they viewed the witch and how they viewed physiognomy at the time, and they transplanted the crone iconography or the ugliness iconography of the witch stereotype onto the Jew rather than the other way around. And how the fuck you can turn that into it's a Jewish stereotype even though the character is a witch and even though it's a medieval setting, I don't fucking know. But yeah, as it happens, your historical illiteracy astounds me. The Jewish stereotype was born out of the witch stereotype, not the other way around. You twit. Moving on.
This story is a common storytelling device in fantasy that came from the extremely anti-Semitic Semitic trope of blood libel. Um,
Again,
all of
the idea.
hold on. Well, they're going to give an explanation of it. So.
Mhm.
While emerging theories among historians place the origin around 600 AD, most agree stems the brutal murder of an English boy, William of Norwich, in 1144. William's family blamed Jewish people, accusing them of a ritual ritualistic blood sacrifice of Christian children in observance of Passover. The conspiracy theory stuck around past the Middle Ages as an effective scapegoating tool during turbulent times. Any kind of upheaval, economic, social, political, etc., has successfully been blamed on Jewish people since. This includes art and stories like fairy tales that together created the fantasy genre. BG3 is not the only huge fantasy game in 2023 that influenced people like.
Okay, once again, if you weren't so preoccupied with getting bloody offended by everything and making social justice arguments out of everything when there aren't any, you would know that the idea of Jewish blood libel comes from the older and more popular stereotype of the witch being a cannibal. Because again, in the medieval mind, a witch was someone who had made a deal with the devil. And therefore engaged in morally depraved things, because of course in the medieval mind, especially the medieval Christian mind, only Christians could be moral, and therefore people who were not Christian must engage in immoral shit, especially if they were thought to make a deal with the devil. But yes, the witch trope actually predates the Jewish trope. And given that this character is supposed to nominally be a witch, which trope do you think they're referring to, if they are indeed referring to any at all, and not just telling a story set in a medieval setting that happens to feature a witch doing what witches tended to do in these types of stories? It baffles me. Not only do you need to bring morally charged hysteria into things, but your morally charged hysteria is a bastardization of history that requires you to select out things that don't fit your narrative instead of actually addressing the history as it currently stands. God damn it. Moving on.
This trope isn't the only strike against ethno for anti-Semitism. It's the strongest in a growing list. It transforms into a described less humanoid creature with an elongated nose. There's a literal poisoned well sitting outside her tea house, although the endgame consequences are limited so far. As a fraudulent businesswoman, Marina, as you see by using the wand, bitter divorce, Ethel also invokes the trope of the greedy sheep. If it were just one of these things, it would be kind of iffy. It's the combination that really makes it hard to ignore.
Oh, god damn it. Again, you're talking about something that is more rooted in witch iconography than it is in Jewish iconography, and given that this character's a witch and this game is set in the medieval period, which do you think they're using? And it's not like the idea of a witch that lives in the middle of nowhere and makes bargains with people and is greedy is a new phenomena either. Look at Ursula from Little Mermaid. Look at I guess you could make some kind of argument for Maleficent, although she's not a particularly great example. Look at the Evil Queen in Snow White, etc., etc. Also, looking into actual mythology for a bit, look at the case of Baba Yaga. She is well known to make deals both for will and woe that usually result in her having the upper hand because, wise old witch and so on. Look at all the various fairy tropes in the Western canon and so on. Supernatural entities, especially wiser or immortal supernatural entities, make bargains. It is what they do, and yes, they tend to be a bit self-interested when they do so. This is not new. It's not new to mythology. It's not new to fiction. It's not new to anything regarding the historical record. Like, again, you are seeing witch tropes and you are insisting on Jewish tropes, even though the character in question is supposed to be a witch. Moving on.
Grandchild said this about 2 months ago. Now it's clear that they are just bigots and so are you for defending them. Also, this is anti-black. Yeah, that's how they.
I know you're being sarcastic, Dragon Turtle, but someone somewhere actually believes that. Even
Yeah.
though I've been a practicing occultist for 17 years, which literally encompasses all of my adult life and a considerable portion of my teenage years, and I am very uh, pedantic about the history thereof, they're going to try and lecture me about how I'm wrong about this, even though it is very obviously ahistorical to insist on Jewish tropes when they're using witch tropes, and very evidently so.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on.
All right. Going forward, like when Japanese media is criticized for problematic content, I anticipate some will think that I am just projecting American ideals on another country, as Baldur's 3 developers Leslie Studios are based in Belgium, or that I'm somehow the anti-Semitic one for simply pointing out how this draws upon a millennium of anti-Jewish stereotypes. As previously outlined, these tropes are older than the discovery of the Americas. Okay.
You're the anti-Semitic one, darling, because you're looking at something that is exploiting witch tropes and you're seeing Jewish tropes. Yes, they had those tropes in common, but once again, you have to keep in mind this thing we call context and causality, because the Jewish tropes come out of the witch tropes, not the other way around. I.e., people projected the trope of the witch iconography onto the Jew because Jews had a different religion that did have mystical elements to it. And so when they saw, when a large percentage of Jewish people migrated into Western Europe in the Middle Ages, they saw someone with an alternate religion that looked vaguely mystical to them, and they projected the um the witch trope onto the Jew because the Jew had a non-Christian mystical looking religion, and also because in the mind of a person in the Middle Ages there was this thing called physiognomy, which said that someone who was morally ugly was also um practically ugly or externally ugly, and that's why you get the trope of the Jew caricature taking on the crone fixtures, like the elongated nose, like the missing teeth, ex- like the wrinkles, etc., etc. Because the idea of the medieval mind was that evil, in the abstract spiritual or moral sense, would translate to the body if you did it enough, which is also why very often you see things like feral witches or feral goblin type figures. And again, this goes back to I think we covered it. There was an article where um, someone was offended because Harry Potter's goblins looked like stereotypical Jews, and I almost had an aneurysm that time too, because it's very obvious they took the goblin iconography and gave it to Jews rather than the other way around. Or are you insinuating that there was actual physiological evidence for Jewish people looking that way? Because that would also, once again, make you anti Semitic. But yes, the thing that makes you anti Semitic, dear, is that you saw something which was not in any way meant to be Jewish, but was instead meant to be an an invocation of a witch trope in a medieval fantasy story, something that is entirely, within the course of reasonableness, and you discounted the entirety of the witch history and focused only on the Jewish parallels. Moving on. But actually, no, there's one other thing I wanted to say because I almost said it earlier and I missed it. You're not projecting American ideals or European ideals onto Belgium. You're projecting social justice ideas onto everyone who doesn't accord with social justice. Your social justice
Mm.
is not, no matter how much you wish it was, the universal morality that everyone in the West adheres to. Thankfully. But yes, you are not speaking for all of America or all of educated people. You're speaking specifically for someone who can't look beyond social justice, as evidenced very much by the fact that you work for the Mary Goddamn Sue, mind you.
All right. Hold on. Actually, just scroll down a little bit. Giant Troll just said something. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they basically lumped all good and bad stuff together, like someone was talented, just genetically born with power, more good, etc. And it is all supposed to be linked and vice versa, of course.
Yes, there's some exception to that rule. For example, there was what you might call the uncanny valley of attractiveness, whereby if someone was unnaturally attractive, like Cersei or Lilith or any other sort of seductor or seductress, that was also seen as unnatural or a sign of a bad thing. But as a general rule, the idea was that ugliness would show on ugliness that occurred on the inside or in the soul would either eventually or just naturally show on the outside as well. So yes, there was an implication that if you were born with natural gifts, that had to be a sign. It had to be a reflect your external virtues of your practical meritocratic virtues had to be a reflection of inner moral virtues, and therefore someone's skill at something could be used as a token in a moral argument. It's fucked up, but then again, there's probably more truth to physiognomy than we would entirely be willing to admit a lot of the time. As Roald Dahl famously said, um, a good person a good person who is ugly will will be seen as at least cute because of the goodness of their hearts. A bad person who is beautiful will not maintain that beauty for very long because eventually their ugliness will show on their face. And I paraphrased the shit out of that, I know, but you guys know what I'm referring to. Because, like, again, I don't entirely agree with physiognomy because many pretty people can be ugly on the inside and vice versa, and practical meritocratic skills don't necessarily translate into moral virtue. But there is at least a causal element to physiognomy whereby, yes, if you are a miserable, ugly person on the inside, it will probably show. And yes, I'm fully aware that I am a miserable, ugly person, both inside and out, and therefore I probably am evidence of my own claim, but
Um,
I admit it.
and yet somehow I'm the one with self-appreciation issues. Um, one, you ain't that bad looking. Two, I think you're a pretty cool dude, right? Like you're a nice person.
I appreciate that. I think you're wrong, but I'm not going to put much effort into disabusing you of your wrongness because otherwise I would be extremely lonely.
Um, I'll read this and then we'll move on.
Mhm.
That and from an evolutionary perspective, morality, sort of skills, physical powers, ability, health, and looks are all value traits. So the talented and beautiful people always hook up. I think uh, you are really just neutral or very slightly good. You at least aren't addicted.
I'm I refuse to be in the good category, Dragon Turtle. At the most, I'm lawful neutral, but I am teetering on the edge of lawful evil. Trust me.
I, I could call bullshit on that, but we're not. I'm not gonna waste like we're not wasting like 5 hours trying to discuss that.
Regardless of where I fall on the morality spectrum, I am lawful. That is my one redeeming virtue is I don't do neutrality and I don't do chaos. I am somewhere on the lawful spectrum. There just appears to be argument as to where.
Anyway, moving on.
Mhm.
Eurasia, especially the Europe part, exported anti-Semitism to the rest of the world via colonization during the Roman Empire and exploration. Okay, what the fuck? That is so. How the fuck do you think? Okay, so feel free to
She's
tell
not
me.
even restricting it to medieval shit anymore. She's actually implicating the Roman Empire in the shit now.
But the fact, no, the issue I take with that, like literal sentence, mind you,
Mhm.
is that that Europe is where anti-Semitism came from.
As though no one ever outside Europe ever hated the Jews or hated anyone who was a Jew.
Or is that what anti-Semitism means? I assumed it was like just effectively another word for like just not liking another group of people.
Anti-Semitism specifically refers to hatred of Jewish people.
Oh, okay. But also, I guess I could also broaden that with like not like other parts of the world didn't like other groups of people.
Also, keep in mind that the Jewish people are spawned of the Habirus and the Israelites, and people who lived next door to the Israelites and the Habirus, which would later become anglicized as the Hebrews, didn't particularly like them very much. Look at the Canaanites. Look at look at the people. Look at the Moabites. Look at there are dozens of other tribes from around that same region, the region of the Tigris and Euphrates River, that were somewhere between Egypt and Sumer and Babylon, that didn't particularly like each other at all. I mean, not gonna get into a scriptural thing here, but even the Bible admits that the Israelites and the Hebrews did quite a lot of murdering and pillaging over the course of their tribal period. So yeah, I somehow don't think that anti-Semitism A was a European thing in and of itself, B had anything to do with the Roman Empire, and C was even something that other allegedly Semitic ethnicities didn't engage in. Not to mention that, Jews can disagree among each other, and very often did, but whatever.
Also, I mean, Japan kept itself isolated for hundreds, I guess thousands or so years, um, until very like within like the last couple hundred or so years,
Yeah,
be more open.
yeah. So some people probably were in the category of anti-Semitist just by virtue of being isolationist, even though they have nothing personal against Jews. They have something personal against everyone who isn't them.
Yeah, which is still stupid, mind you, but
Well, I mean, yes, but that's
not
outside of the
even.
purview of this particular article.
Anyway, that was only the first sentence. So,
Yeah, but
um,
long story short, there are plenty of Middle Eastern people who hate the shit out of the Jews. It wasn't just a European thing, and it certainly predates Roman occupation by many thousands of years.
the latter being kicked off by a country deporting and torturing Jewish people in a total risk scare. Also, some very specific anti-Semitic conspiracy theories originate in the region around and including the Aryan's home of Belgium. I, I don't know. I have not. I don't know what to say to that. I like it's so.
Again, you're dealing with a character in this game who is a witch, and most of the Jewish stereotypes to which you are alluding are stereotypes that were borrowed from the stereotype of the witch. And given that the character is a witch and the thing is set in the medieval period, don't you think you should at least try to restrict your ire to, like, not that this would be true either, because misogyny is largely bullshit, but if you were making this article about the alleged misogyny of the witch trial bullshit, that would at least be more arguable than taking something that was projected onto the Jews by people who we're using the witch archetype as a basis for it, and ignoring all the witch-based shit, even though you're dealing with a witch character, and hyper-focusing on the anti-Semitism shit. Moving on. Bless you.
Thank you. In the light of the game's more nuanced take on other stand-ins for marginalized people like Tieflings, Aryan Jewish people, Romani people, and Black Americans, what the fuck? I'm not even saying that I think the problems with Ethel were intentional. I don't. Even still, intent only gets you so far, because this is only Act 1. I'm wholeheartedly hoping something expands with the story and discuss this trope. With letters in and around the tea house indicating similar hags across Ceylon, maybe a sister with a name starting with M, without indicating that congregation or cabal, this could lead to more info changing ethical story for the better. Regardless, this is another example of storytellers failing to confront underlying issues of prejudice in the genres they're exploring. And even in a game I'm thoroughly enjoying. That's worth discussing. What the fuck?
Did it ever occur to you that they're not trying to be political with any of this shit? Did it ever occur to you that they wanted to make a reference to the medieval understanding of things like this, especially in a fantasy context? I.e., the reason they're using all these witch tropes, and they are witch tropes, not Jew tropes, is because the character is a witch and we're dealing with a high fantasy medieval setting. Because I can guarantee you that if I went to Russia and showed them a picture of this crone type figure, they would not be surprised because they have the lore of the Baba Yaga, and on it goes.
And so, well, actually, I don't know if that counts. Crochet. That count as
Well, he's similar. Obviously, he's male, but yes, there was also the idea that he was old and decrepit and miserable looking again because of basically the physiognomy argument of he is morally bad, therefore he is also ugly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's not a new complaint for Dungeons and Dragons or Wizards of the Coast. These grades aren't just about doing better for progress' sake. Right now, many of the beliefs held by people in or around Yaman, blame Jewish people or dog whistle for them for contemporary controversies. They often invoke the need to protect white Protestant children from a changing world. As we see on the news every day, deadly blood Bible conspiracy theories are thriving things. You don't need uncritical representation in an otherwise fantastic thing. What the fuck?
Okay, my dear sweet Mary Sue Ryder. I am a practicing occultist. I am also physically disabled. I am also gay. I want you to leave these tropes alone because, once again, they are a portrayal of how the medieval mind thought the universe worked. And it means that someone actually did some kind of lore research. Granted, the medieval mind was mostly full of shit because it was the medieval period and we were between civilizations at the time. But it is nice to occasionally get a reference to them, especially because something in those stories was meaningful to people. Not to mention that some of it might be accurate, but never mind. But yeah, speaking myself as an occultist, I think I have more right to be offended by this than you do on the grounds that, I am a practicing occultist. I am as close as can be reasonably expected to be a witch type person. I'm not going to call myself a warlock because warlock translates as oathbreaker, and never under the sun will I be doing that. But
Seriously?
Yeah, the word warlock comes from an Anglo-Saxon word that translates directly as oathbreaker. So yeah, and yes, it never ceases to amaze me that the D&D class warlock is the class that usually ends up making deals with supernatural entities, and yet somehow they call the class of people who do the most bargaining with supernatural entities oathbreakers. That's a good way to get yourself murdered, torture murdered in the medieval period if you fucked around with the supernatural entity and then broke your word. But never mind. But yeah, I am a practicing occultist with more than 17 years of experience, and I am also an avid student of history. So if anyone is going to be taking offense to medieval witch tropes, it is going to be me. And I certainly am not offended by this. I am more pleased that someone who made Baldur's Gate did some kind of research on this shit. Because they're obviously using the trope to either add flavor to their fantasy setting or to kind of lampshade and make fun of the trope, which means they're aware of the trope, which is more than I can say for you because you saw these tropes and immediately thought Jew instead of witch, even though the character is a witch.
To be fair, they probably wouldn't consider witchcraft or occult, the occult, credible.
I know, but these are also, feminist writers for the Mary Sue, and feminists have a nasty habit of appropriating the shit out of new age bullshit. So, and also that they have someone on the staff who is a pagan because of that one Frozen article and shit. So you would think someone on the Mary Sue staff would go, hey, it makes more sense to go the feminist witch angle than it does go the anti-Semitism angle to this person. But apparently no one did. Either because they didn't know, or they didn't care, or they saw the Jew before they saw the witch, and that's all they could think of.
Yeah. That was the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to trailers.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, the right there, you can probably judge if you're a witch unless you wait to finish the stuff.
Okay, I appreciate the Monty Python reference, Dragon Turtle, but the actual reason for swimming the witch in the medieval Christian mind was the idea that water was a purifying force, and therefore the water would force her to float because it would reject her evil. That was the logic.
And because people didn't know the fact about buoyancy.
Well, no, in practical terms, I'm sure they did know something about buoyancy because there were sailors and soldiers and ship makers and shit. But the actual rationale cited by the clergy when they were doing the thing was water is a pure thing, and therefore if we tie her down and have her try to swim, the water will reject her evil and therefore she will float. And or sometimes it was she will try to act in self-preservation and make herself float with magic. Although for as much as that one gets cited more often in modern times than the other one, that was the amount of justification or the amount of times that justification was used were actually inverted. Usually it was the witch was impure, so the water would reject her rationale rather than that she will act in self-preservation rationale.
Either way, they were idiots.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
They were also idiots because many people who confessed to the crime of witchcraft straight up admitted that they got their powers from a fairy, and yet the clergy reframed it as devil because, oh, that fairy you're dealing with clearly isn't a fairy, it's clearly a demon. Which again, I expect made Mama Titania very, very annoyed.
And so did they try to make it that an innocent person wouldn't drown?
No, they said that a guilty person wouldn't drown.
Hey.
So if you drown, we're guilty. If you somehow manage to just be a good enough swimmer to survive, then or if you drown, you were innocent, but whoops, we fucked up, and now you're dead. But at least your soul has gone away to heaven. And if you somehow manage to swim, or if this was a person who had actually had some sort of supernatural help and didn't, make the deal with the devil, then you're still fucked. I wonder how many saints they accidentally drowned because it was literally God trying to help them survive, and they took it as witchcraft anyway.
I don't remember because I feel like it's a lot.
That's the other problem. If you take any supernatural intervention as demonic intervention, then doesn't that kind of fly in the face of your whole sainthood thing?
I don't know.
But
I don't know. People, again, people. Anyway, was there any penalty for this person was proclaimed innocent? Did the accuser get off scot-free?
I would have to actually go and look that up. I don't know off the top of my head. I feel like I remember a couple cases where that happened when the person was like important enough, or if the person like had an estate. But under normal circumstances, usually no. But again, I'll have to go look back through the trial record because I actually do have some books that contain witchcraft trial records, but I'll have to go back and look through them to see how often the person who falsely accused them was actually punished for their false accusation.
Anyway, we're on to the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
So the first trailer of the night is something that is kind of a staple of myself that has been introduced relatively frequently in the podcast within the last year or so.
It's fine, Dragon Troll. Either way, I want to say that if it did happen, it wasn't common. So that's probably the best answer I can come up with at this moment. Is insofar as it did happen, it depended on how much property the person actually owned who died, and also to what degree the person doing the accusation was deemed to be at fault for their accusation. Moving on. Is there a Ruby specific fruit that you want to go with?
No. Anything that would be Ruby specific. So yeah, this is the official trailer for Justice League X Ruby Superheroes and Huntsman Part 2. And this was my thing. I pushed to have this covered. Because we covered the first one, and I talked about Ruby and stuff a couple of times on here.
Yeah, I figured as soon as he sent it that we would be covering it because I knew how much of it was his thing.
Right. And granted, two things I do want to mention. Something I kind of mentioned earlier, but well, first off, not entirely. I do want to point this out. We're not entirely sure of, as far as I have heard, the fate of Ruby is kind of up in the air. They don't eat dust, as far as I'm aware, so dust nano wouldn't work.
That sounds kind of disturbing, anyway. From what I understand of dust in the Ruby setting.
Well, Well, some people do actually infuse their bodies with dust. So
Okay, so it's not the case of like it is de facto inedible. It's just that they don't usually.
no, they don't eat it. They literally supplant it in their body. Like,
I see.
stab themselves with crystals.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Um. Also, rest in peace, Arlene Sorkin. Sorkin?
Wait, Arlene Sorkin died?
Yeah, recently. For those who aren't aware, she is both the inspiration and the original voice actress for Harley Quinn during the Batman animated series. Um, yeah,
So we've lost Bats and we've lost Harley.
yeah.
Only the Joker remains. There,
And I remember a lot of people mentioning that they really would like Harley Quinn, just out of simple respect, to retire the character for some time.
they're not going to because
Well, I doubt that, but
it's too profitable. But yeah,
well, I'm sorry. To be fair, the version of Harley Quinn she played, which was the definitive version, the first, um, is still the best version. Honestly.
yes, she still is the original and best version of Harley. Sorry, Margot Robbie, and we don't know how Lady Gaga is gonna do in Joker 2.
Or the Harley Quinn series, I mean, I saw a little bit of it, but I didn't support.
Kelly Coco is fine, but she's mostly playing herself. It seems like she's not even trying to put on the New Yorker voice.
Um, well, so I just that a lot of my experience with Harley Quinn has been kind of up and down. Anyway, yeah. So we're talking about Justice League X Ruby here. Let me full screen that. I got a few things to say about it. Um, so it's weird how they don't actually. It's supposed to be an anime, and a lot of animes have like these very like iconic foods for characters. Even if it's not like important to the plot, they have something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, One Piece has a devil fruit. Naruto has ramen.
Um, DBT has the sensu bean.
Yeah. Uh, uh, um. Hmm, something I just noticed. Okay. So yeah. Banana.
Banana. Even Death Note has the apple.
The potato chips as well.
Ah, yes. The oh, although in terms of like the imagery and the marketing, it's usually the apple rather than the potato chip.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Probably a good idea that they did that, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But banana.
Yeah.
Calling the Justice League. We need your help.
Grim. Yeah, not pretty.
There are so many of them. How did this happen so quickly?
Kilgore.
Really? Really?
I will say this: the adult versions of them look a lot better than the teenage versions we've seen.
Yes. Obviously true.
Yeah. Um.
Which is sad because it's not like you couldn't do a teenage version of the Justice League.
No. I talk about like how much I hated the design. Because they felt really busy and also didn't really match well with a lot of the characters. I'm also noticing that even though it is still kind of cheap looking, like the background, not the backgrounds themselves, but like the landscapes look kind of bland, like the cities.
A bit, yeah. It doesn't seem like they
also,
spent much time on
it does seem like
actually
not
portraying
a lot of the budget was put into this one, or they had a bigger budget for this one.
Mm.
Um,
Which makes sense because DC is the larger property, so I can see the logic behind that. Still shitty because people like RWBY, but it at least makes financial sense.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if you have anything else to say right now. So.
Banana.
Yeah.
I had the weirdest dream.
It wasn't a dream. We were in Kilgore's digital world.
And he got away. We need to stop him.
He's working with someone stronger, someone smarter.
So, what do we do?
We need to find Team Ruby.
You know, it's bad all over.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird to me because it feels. I should be excited for this, but
It's two of
I
your
don't-
favorite things, and yet you can only cringe.
I just don't think they're utilizing the concept.
No.
You know, Chrononaut. All I can think of is, what if we take an old character and make him truly evil, not this Disney level evil, but real world evil level. I feel like we can use more information on that. I'm not entirely sure I follow.
I'm sure Chrono's brain is just having a Chrono's brain moment. Keep in mind he's bipolar.
Yeah, again, those are okay, so something I also brought up before. I have seen some similar issues with like scaling and stuff, and how like the models of the characters seem a little what's the word? Like they're just being put on backgrounds instead of being in the space.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like PNGs or something. You know what I mean?
Flat?
Yes, thank you. But also, I'm just not really getting like a. Also, how this trailer is edited and stuff, I'm just not getting like a sense of stakes. Like they're saying the stakes, but I'm not.
They're telling and not showing.
Well, they did show scenes of like Ren invading the city and stuff, but they're either too fast or they're not showing the real destruction.
Yeah,
Also,
I don't really get a sense of the plot either, like how.
Yeah, it's fairly nonsensical. Also, colors. While they're kind of vibrant, again, RWBY was a show that was supposed to be based off colors. It's supposed to have like a very vibrant thing, and they were kind of that in the beginning. And very vibrant color landscapes and backgrounds and costumes and character designs and stuff. And DC is like comic book, and usually comic books are very like colorful, very like dynamic and all that. So you kind of
I feel like they would benefit from more lines. I know they're using a computer animation thing, but like I feel like they benefit from more outlines.
Like heavier lines, like their outlines and stuff, and yeah, like I think I've said that too. And again, the movie Super Sons, you remember that one we talked about like before? That has a similar kind of 3D art style, but it's more artistic
Mhm.
and a little more comic book like and colorful too. It's weird because
Mhm.
to me that is how you should have these movies should have been done. And I
Mhm.
might pull up some stills if I can find some of Super Sons and like try to have them like side to side.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I'm just I don't know.
It looks a bit uncanny.
Also not
Like
full rendered either. Like it's not
like
finished.
it seems almost like Batman's like it seems almost like the lower half of Batman's face isn't 3D, and that bothers me. It looks flat.
Again, I do agree with the line thing and maybe also the shading is also
Mhm.
um okay. That Chrononaut reading old comics, looking at new ones and some of the new shows. Now you can tell they are from privilege and have no concept of it.
Mhm.
And that, anyway, shall we?
Banana.
Um,
Over? But why does it feel like they have it out for us?
Good to see you again, Ruby Rose. Here, it's Superman.
We're different here.
I feel
Something
uh,
just occurred to me.
yeah.
Something just occurred to me that is definitely a me point, but
Mm-hmm.
you you might I might be being stupid, or you might think this is a good point. The DC universe has more magic than the Ruby universe does, right?
Uh, has more people. I would say it has more people that know how to use magic. Yeah,
So shouldn't their powers be amplified? Their semblances?
that is a good question. Although it does look like because they're in the DC universe now, that their semblances are being turned into superpowers, which is pretty similar to, I suppose, what they were doing with like when the Justice League was in the DC
Okay,
universe.
so they did modify them. Okay, so I'm not pulling that out of my ass.
No,
Good.
because Blake cannot fly this character right now, or do what they're doing with this thing. Also,
Hmm.
they got rid of her cat ears, which makes you think they're making her human. But it because of the character model, it seems weird that she doesn't have ears now.
Well, it's not like it's also not like there aren't animal people in the DC universe, so it wouldn't have like
It,
you know what I mean? Like it's not like they're translating them into our universe. They're translating them into the mechanics of the DC universe. So their semblances probably should be stronger because there's more magic in the DC universe than there is in the Ruby universe. Or at the very least it's easier to access it,
uh,
and there's no reason why she couldn't have kept her cat ears.
Dimensional DC might just have a larger variety of powers and a larger scale. Yeah, that's actually pretty accurate. Okay.
But I was just thinking their powers are fueled by magic, or at least the remnants of magic. So if their powers are fueled by magic and there's more magical energy at the disposal of people in the DC universe, then that should like you guys remember when you guys remember in Ben 10 uh Ultimate Alien, I think, where Gwen goes to Ledger Domain for the first time and her magic is super supercharged because there's so much mana flying everywhere in Ledger
Mhm.
Domain. It In my head, I would expect the semblances to operate like that because the semblances are like the remnant of a spark of magic. So it's it's like lighting a candle in a empty room versus lighting a candle in a room full of um in a room full of gas that somebody left the oven running for too long. It's you know
No,
the spark of the semblance is stable in the Ruby universe, but in the DC universe where there's more magic flying everywhere, it should be supercharged.
I don't think that seems that Finland is affected at all by After Effects. Well, clearly it is, because again, if we're looking at this image of Blake here, the only thing she can really do was create effectively like after images of herself. Here she's generating like some type of black fire energy and using it to fly and stuff. So clearly it is affected. And yeah, it's supposed to be tied to like the soul. Like it's supposed to be a representation of the soul. Well, the aura is supposed to be a manifestation of your soul, while its semblance is they're both tied to your soul, I believe. But aura is supposed to be like a shield to you, while its semblance is kind of the inner self, I suppose, or something like that. It's never clearly defined. So.
Yeah, but my point is it's tied somehow to like the metaphysics of the soul. So in a world full of magical energy like the DC universe, it should be amplified to the point of ridiculousness.
Right.
As a reference for you, Dragon Turtle, remember what happened to Harry's magic in Battlegrounds when there was so much extra magical energy flying everywhere? It should be like that.
Yeah, and also the design I'm seeing here. It's kind of a similar issue that they've had in recent stories, recent seasons where they've done costume changes or design changes for the characters. Almost a little over designed, I guess. Kind of, or they're just not meshing well, I think. To me at least.
Would actually help if they highlighted the differences in the art style. Actually, that would
Again,
kind of like they did in the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour. If anyone remembers that.
Well, it's all being used in the same engine, so yeah, exactly. Like honestly, I think it would have been cool if they used like the art style from like the Kamala verse or something like that, or like.
But yeah, that's the thing. They could have used the. They could have translated the Ruby characters into like the DC animated art style instead of using the same Flash thing.
I think it's supposed to be Maya. I could be wrong. Yeah, Jimmy Timmy Power thing. I liked it. I thought it was cool. I thought it was good. Denzel says he loves that.
Dragon Turtle. His magic was boosted by the extra fear of the city under siege. To the point that when he tried to do the Egg Shen spell and create lightning in his hands, he had to aim it at a tree, and it made the tree explode because, in addition to the extra magic flying everywhere, the boundary between the mortal world and the Never Never was weakened.
Right. But I also want to point this out. It's like the designs that I'm seeing so far of Team Ruby in the DC universe, like their superhero personas, they feel very lackluster. Like not iconic. Like when you compare them to
nobody had fun translating them between art styles, it seems.
I wouldn't say that. I'm just saying like I don't really think thought was put into how they would like dress as. How would they look as superheroes compared to like their normal look because effectively huntsmen and women are supposed to be like superheroes.
Well, I mean to be fair, they didn't put much thought into how the superheroes translate to huntsmen either in the first one. So
Yeah. Anyway,
banana.
yeah. I guess Banana actually does work because the character Sun Wukong in there.
Oh right, the Monkey King.
Yeah. Anyway, Banana.
Banana.
I wish we reconnected under better circumstances. But our world hangs in the balance.
What is that?
They made a new Grimm.
Okay, that feels weird to say because all these Grimm are from the actual show. Like every single one of those Grimm I have seen in the actual show. So it's weird that they're
So they're not even. Oh, they're not even playing. Oh dear.
well, okay, the jellyfish are new, I think.
Chalk it up once again to wasted potential.
I get
Because
this.
how
Here's the
would
thing.
the characters from Ruby react to some of the monsters from the DC universe that aren't Grimm? Would they think they were Grimm, do you think?
Honestly, I would love to see them go up against a supervillain. Have them go up against the Legion of Doom and be completely outclassed because they have no idea what the fuck they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, like, if the Justice League had fought Grimm in the Ruby universe, it only makes sense that Team Ruby would have to fight something.
Would have to fight supervillains.
Yeah. No,
Something like Starro, something like Solomon Grundy, something like that.
I don't know what they fight, but and here's the thing: I'm not seeing a lot of dynamics, like the characters interacting. With, again, in these crossovers, that's kind of the main draw for me.
Yeah, the worlds clashing, the characters interacting, etc., etc.
But no, I agree, Dragon Turtle. But I just, if nothing else, like I don't know, I'm just like everything I'm seeing, like at least give us some new Grimm at the very least. But I'm seeing all Grimm that have appeared in if they literally say they made new Grimm, but I'm seeing Grimm that have already been in the show.
Unless they look different because of the art style difference.
No, there is no art style difference. It's literally the same engine.
Stupid. At least in the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour, they translated things from Jimmy Neutron into the Fairly Odd art style, and they translated things from the Fairly Odd art style into
okay, sorry. That what Giant Troll said before was meant to be your question, how they would react to DC monsters.
the. Okay, but anyway,
you know what? I actually love it. Yeah, and again, like, also my main issue too is like the cityscape. Like, DC has some very iconic looking cities in terms of comics.
Gotham, Metropolis, Star
Central
City,
City.
etc.
Yeah, they're very uniquely designed. This is generic fucking cityscape. This is not anything like.
Yeah, I can't even tell where they are. Are they supposed to be in Metropolis, or this is supposed to be Gotham, or what?
I'm assuming Metropolis, but it looks like shit. Like, I'm not getting the city. Well, honestly, Art Deco was so fucking cool.
Yeah, Metropolis is supposed to be like an homage to like 1950s World's Fair type World of Tomorrow look.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think I have anything else to say. So.
Banana.
Yeah.
The Grimm have evolved. They're sort of power to fight us.
How are you doing this?
Whoever is working with Kilgore, what they're doing will destroy us.
We need to end this.
Okay. So I do stand corrected. There were some new designs.
Mhm.
And it's interesting that they're being used to fight the Justice League that can adapt their weaknesses. But I don't know, man. I'm just not feeling it. You know, like this.
Very little thought seems to have been put into this, or effort for that matter.
Or if there was, maybe a lot of it's cut. It's been cut.
Mhm. Anyway,
Yeah,
but anyway.
you know.
Kilgore, come face us!
You come into my territory and expect to win? Let's go stop some monsters.
How is it that the poster on the DVD cover was a lot better than the
Yeah,
actual everything itself?
because they didn't translate the effort put into the poster into the actual product.
Okay, so just for comparison's sake, and I really wanted, but I tried to do it. Hold on, I'm gonna get some skills of. Uh, yeah, I manage my disappointment of this. Okay, again, sorry, it's kind of slow.
Oh.
Yeah, look, it just is. Yeah, Giant Troll. I was thinking that too. Gang, the blonde lady, has an outfit that looks similar to Hera, who was based off Achilles, which was more Greco-Roman style, while Yang How Long had more of like a biker kind of look.
Hmm.
Okay, just just so we have a comparison here, I found one still from the movie, or like a promotion still of just the history. There we go. Uh, yeah, again, a lot of the issues that, to be fair, here they look more like the costumes look more colored. I don't know why in the trailer they look kind of dull. That's weird, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is. Unless they couldn't figure out how to translate the art style from one image to a
No,
moving picture.
This is still from the actual movie, but all the stuff we saw in the trailer, it seemed a little less colorful, like it was desaturated.
Yeah, which means that either the movie gets more colorful in other scenes, which why the fuck didn't you just put the effort into the scenes you wanted to be in the trailer, or this is some kind of editing error and they just forgot how to do color schemes.
It's super weird. I don't get it. And then here's from Super Sons, which is kind of my when this was kind of my preferred look if they were doing a Justice League X Ruby or DC X Ruby crossover thing in terms of an animated.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's 3D animated. But it has better shading, the colors are better, and it looks, and the background, well, does look painted in this still. I believe it does have more depth to it, though.
Yeah.
Instead of like just a like a what's the word, depth of field to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all stylized. Because, like you said, there should have been more lines to help, like those white lines, like on a black costume or something, help define like musculature and air, and, like pins and stuff.
So that stuff actually looks solid when it needs to move and shit.
And some of it doesn't blend in with each other, so it doesn't look like a big mass of stuff.
Yeah, because the Ruby art style almost looks like it's like a series of color smears, like blotches instead of.
Like the biggest issue with like Ruby, like the models of the characters, is that they don't have like those outlines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like those heavy like black lines, like that would help define things,
Mm-hmm.
like their fingers and stuff. But I totally agree with what you said. It's very, very much like uh, sorry, blotches of color, smears of color. Wait.
Mm-hmm. Like somebody asked Jackson Pollock to draw DC or Ruby characters or something.
Yeah, somehow that actually doesn't sound. That actually sounds like it would look a lot better than DC.
Yeah, it actually probably would look better if Jackson Pollock did it.
Like, I don't want to hate this. I really don't. I honestly think it would have been cool because they're both interesting worlds with a lot of potential. Well, Ruby has a lot of potential. DC has potential that's been explored for almost 100 years by now.
Mm-hmm.
But, Jesus Christ. The fact that it, I mean, I honestly wasn't expecting to get a theatrical release, mind you, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that it's a straight to DVD movie is fairly telling of how much effort or care was actually put into it. And if there were people that actually cared and tried to work on this, I have a feeling that they were just kind of beaten down or told not to give a shit.
It's like the Henry Cavill thing, the person who tells them, hey guys, you know there's lore and character consistencies and art consistencies we should be enforcing. They're told, stop being such a toxic fan. These things don't actually matter, Herder. But anyway, last thing of the evening, and then I have to go get food. What?
Sorry, I had to wait.
Mm.
So this is so the official teaser trailer, or effectively a trailer, is about 4 minutes long of Rebel Moon, which we'll get into it. It's a Zack Snyder film being produced on Netflix.
Because apparently they have some sort of exclusivity deal with him now.
Honestly, given how much he got fucked over with Warner Brothers, I don't blame him.
Yeah, and it's a good get for them too. So, yeah,
Yeah, okay.
good choices all around. Anyway,
I don't think there's a specific thing that we can really tie to this. To be honest,
no, banana.
I don't know.
Do you know the story of the Princess Issa?
Is that Anthony Hopkins?
Yes.
Well, fuck, that bar just got raised but quick. You do not waste Anthony Hopkins, Zach. If you waste Anthony Hopkins, I kill you.
I will say this actually looks. It's not as desaturated as I thought it'd be.
No, it looks good so far. Although, I mean, to be fair, we've only seen a couple frames.
Right, and I mean, Zack Snyder always has good trailers for his movies, so not entirely indicative of his eventual work. So, but this tip looks well made from what we've seen so far, and actually pretty surprisingly good tone has been established in the first point.
But banana.
But Giant Trump says, unless that's just something more that they were told that we are making something cheap and guaranteed to get views in the first few episodes to brand which I think was drawing your comment earlier about
the Henry Cavill syndrome. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Banana.
In myth, she was called the Redeemer. It was said this child would stop the madness of war. That she was to usher in a new age of peace and compassion.
I will say again, like the designs and stuff actually look pretty cool.
Wasn't expecting the African mythology angle, but I don't hate it.
Is there African mythology?
It appears to be.
Well, this is like supposed to be a space opera. I mean, sure, iconography wise, sure, I can understand that, but.
Strange connections. I don't hate it though.
No, it's actually good. I'm actually kind of engaged right now.
And I mean, once more, Anthony Hopkins is always a win. And he had better stay always a win or I kill you.
Right. Unless they're just having to be the narrator, which I'd be totally fine with.
Again, that's not a bad choice. Did you know he was the narrator on the Jim Carrey Grinch one?
Right.
I didn't recognize his voice the first dozen times I watched that, and then somebody mentioned to me that he was the narrator, and now I can't unhear it.
I forgot there was a narrator.
You forgot there was a narrator in The Grinch.
I was more focused on Jim Carrey's The Grinch.
You forgot there was a narrator in The Grinch. I'm
Okay,
never ever letting you live that down. That is considering that all three versions of it have a narrator, both the book, the Chuck Jones cartoon, and the movie. I'm never letting you live that down.
Two things. One, most of the times I watched The Grinch, I was still in single digits, specifically Jim Carrey's Grinch. Two, I haven't seen it in actually about a decade, I'll be fully honest.
Well, then shame on you.
I have shit going on, okay? Sorry that life.
I know, but I watch it every year, both the Chuck Jones version and the Jim Carrey version.
Anyway, shall we?
Banana.
I was given memories of a world I will never see. Loyalty to a king I cannot serve. And love for a child I could not save.
I'm weirded out by the fact that I'm really compelled by it.
Yeah, it's again this weird fusion of like African mythology and like space opera stuff. It's like I didn't know this was a thing I wanted, but I want it. Like gives it to me.
I mean, I wouldn't say like African mythology is like the overall thing because it seems to incorporate a lot of other things as well. But like I said before, it seems like Zack Snyder's attempt on Star Wars, kind of. It kind of feels like that.
It's like African Star Wars, which again
I don't hate it.
wouldn't have pegged that, but I want it.
Okay, like I've been pretty adamant on this channel and stuff that I'm not like the biggest Zack Snyder fan. I don't dislike him or anything. I find him to be a bit pretentious.
He doesn't pick good projects for his art style, is the thing, or his like visual style.
Yeah.
Or his style in general either, because he has a tendency of injecting like Randy and shit into things that don't require Randy and shit.
Well, also the I at times I find him a bit pretentious for his own good.
Oh yeah. He's Michael Bay with talent, and he really wants to be seen as legitimate.
Fair enough. This actually looks like something that it's weird. Like I don't necessarily hate any of his like original projects. Like granted, only two I'm aware, which is like Army of the Dead and Sucker Punch. What it was called, right?
Yeah, Sucker Punch was bad though. Army of the Dead was pretty good.
It was fine.
I mean, Sucker Punch wasn't awful, but it was really just. I don't think anyone knew what kind of movie they were making.
It's very cool. It's more spectacle than anything else. Let's be honest on that one.
It's a very schizophrenic movie. It goes from one thing to another thing to another thing in the space of like 5 minutes.
Yeah. But this feels very. I'm wondering who else is like working on this, like in terms of like the crew, like the writing staff and stuff. I feel like because I think I've said this before. I don't think Zack Snyder is like a bad director. I think the issue is more or less he doesn't have people to rein him in, or he hasn't yet.
He'd be better off as a cinematographer or a screenwriter in most cases.
Yeah, but here I think it works. So again, that makes me curious who is working on this in terms of like script and stuff. I don't know if he wrote this himself but it's just it's in this weird dichotomy for me where like I know it's a Zack Snyder film, but I would if you didn't tell me or if I didn't know it was a Zack Snyder thing.
Yeah, it doesn't have the usual Zack Snyder isms in it, which is unusual.
I mean, it has slow motion. I mean, it has some visual flares of Zack Snyder if you really pay attention, but tone, atmosphere.
Anyway, this thing is 4 minutes long, and we have barely scratched a minute, so we should move along. But anyway.
And
What do you think they want?
Everything.
I found her. Scargiver.
I am Charles of War.
It's using quite a bit more earth tones than I expect from Zack Snyder. That's interesting.
yeah.
And I will say this for Zack Snyder. You're using earth tones in a much more visually interesting way than fucking Dune. Shouldn't be the case. It shouldn't be giving you that compliment because that compliment shouldn't be true, but it is.
Also, again, like the scale of it, like it feels very grand. Like this really is a space opera.
Yeah, and it looks more like visually epic than Dune.
Okay, so
I know, I'm not getting over Dune. It's a great series that needs a better adaptation, and it doesn't always mean that people jizz over that movie for some
I'm not
reason.
saying get over it. I'm just saying, like, I feel like you would go into a rant at any time.
I know. I'm just saying. Good for you, Zach. You managed to beat the pants off of Denis Villeneuve. Granted, that's a lot easier than it should be, given that they're adapting Dune. But oh well.
Put your hate boner away.
No.
For the duration of this video, please. That's all I ask.
Oh, okay.
All right. Also, Sophia, I'm sure I'm gonna fuck up her name. Sophia. I know her.
Vergara?
Who?
Sofia Vergara. Is that the name you're thinking of?
Yeah, the actress who played Giselle in Kingsman and the Mummy in the 2017 Mummy, and a lot of other things. Great actress, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic actress, and she's the main character here. And it very much works, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's going to do great. I'm already getting a sense of the character here, as we're getting introduced to her already.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly?
Banana.
I was taught that love is weakness. There is a difference between justice and revenge.
There is a price to pay for your defiance.
Again, this is so shocking me with how like okay, visual effects wise, Zack Snyder always nailed it. Always.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. But it's the color, it's the.
It really doesn't look like a Zack Snyder movie.
It really doesn't. Or even like, I guess you could say even feels like a Zack Snyder.
No, it really doesn't. It feels completely different. Which I'm not opposed to him going in a completely different direction. I just didn't think he was capable of it because every movie he's made thus far has been riffs on the same sorts of things.
I mean, okay, so given the experiences that he's had within the last 5 or so years, maybe his outlook or things, again, like his outlook, his perspective,
I mean, a lot has happened to him, so up to and including the whole loss of his daughter.
Yeah.
Condolences.
I'm not saying that he's being factored in this, but again, it certainly feels like he's taking a different direction in terms of like working on his project.
Yeah, and I don't hate it. Now, granted, I don't hate his standard style either. I still maintain that if they ever need somebody to make a question movie, get Zack Snyder in there. But
Right.
like, it's just a matter of you can't take his very specific style and universalize it to everything.
Yeah.
And they tried to.
I certainly made my thoughts known about that with the Man of Steel.
Mhm. Because the last thing Superman should ever be is Randian in any sort of way.
Yeah, it feels. I don't think I can't really think of the words to best describe it. It's very different for Zack. That's like the best way I could put it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to say it's better for it, but it's certainly engaging.
It's certainly a surprise, if nothing else. I don't know
Yeah.
who else was involved in this project, but I'm not seeing a lot of Zack Snyderisms here.
Also, it's a very star-studded cast, and it seems like everyone's putting on their A game for this too.
I mean, for fuck's sake, they got Anthony Hopkins as the narrator. How they fucking manage that in a Netflix adaptation, I'll never know, but they did.
I mean, to be fair, Anthony Hopkins was in The Last Night for Transformers, so it could be like
Yeah, but they also paid him a Scrooge McDuck vault's worth of money to be in that.
And he was kind of the best part, like. Anyway.
Banana.
One moment. I do love this part.
Hold on.
I don't want no trouble.
We're not here to bring any.
Are you ready?
But the fact, like, we're seeing like alien worlds, we're seeing aliens. Again, shit you never really see with. I mean, sure, Zack Snyder's Justice League, but there's more uniformity to them.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is it. Like I keep saying, this feels like Zack Snyder's Star Wars.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to belabor the point here too much, but I'm seeing a lot of use of gold and brown and yellow, and there was a similar color scheme going on in Dune, and this used it better, or this is using it better, as far as I can tell. Yep, moving on. Banana.
You and I both know fear. Let's show them that we're not afraid. Let's show them we're more than the shackles that bind us.
I'm just in awe, really.
I'm just intrigued. I want to see where this goes. I don't know much about the thing other than apparently like African Star Wars, but I'm okay with it. Like I want it.
I heard things about it, but nothing of like note. Like there wasn't really much to talk about, like some mention here and there. But yeah, this
Okay, I want to know when the release date for this is. It must be soon because Netflix doesn't really often put out trailers too early.
Really?
Banana.
A king is a man, and a man can fail. But a myth is indestructible.
The time has come for all that you love. Protect each other.
Again, this is, I mean, sort of Rogue One vibes a bit.
I can see where you're getting that from. I can totally see where you're coming from there.
Rogue One was a lot more grittier in terms of Star Wars stuff at the time. So.
Well, yeah, but still, I can definitely see where you're coming from with this.
Yeah. This is weird. Like, it's weird. Like, it's weird how, like, engaged I am with
Mm-hmm.
it. Huh?
Banana.
Protect each other. Show them no mercy.
Who among you is willing to die for what you believe?
And see, again, there was also a couple of shots of red in there. I think it was the sunset, and I never thought I would see this day, but Zack Snyder is better at visual composition than Denis Villeneuve's Dune.
Django, I think you're being a bit paranoid in that regard. Because I'm a bit worried it's going to be made woke, the whole Afrofuturism post-depression thing. This is Zack Snyder. Yeah, I'll be honest. The guy could never really be woke, even if he wanted to.
He's a straight out Randian objectivist dude. If anything, when it comes to Zack Snyder, you have to worry about the Randian objectivism being too heavy-handed. I don't think he even knows woke well enough to be woke. Plus, I don't see any oppressor oppressed dichotomies here.
Well, I mean, there seems to be a galactic empire and a rebellion. Again, why I tied it back like that.
But it's not. But it's not an oppressor oppressed dichotomy. It's a classism dichotomy, if anything else. Like
the whole Afrofuturism. I think going somewhat. I'm not trying. Maybe I'm just not. Maybe I don't know enough about African mythology or culture to really gauge it, mind you.
There doesn't seem to be much Afrofuturism here, because Afrofuturism is like Black Panther, where they take something tribal and African looking and futurize, technologize it, like they did with Black Panther. They don't seem to be doing that here. So I think you are knee jerking just a little bit. Like, I think there's more of an argument for the equalist subplot in Legend of Korra being social justice than there is this being Afrofuturist. So, like, I think you might be a little bit punch drunk there, my friend.
Yeah.
Okay, but in any case, banana.
Part 1, A Child of Fire, December 22nd, 2023.
December. Okay. Like 3 days before Christmas. That's neat. And it's going to be a multi-part one, so neat.
Part 2, The Stargiver, April 19th, 2024.
Will all be darned. Multiple release dates. Good for them.
Yeah. Alright. which makes me wonder if all we're seeing in part one here are both, and I just splice them together.
I think this is just part one. That they just wanted to. I think partially because of the strikes, they wanted to reassure people that the project was complete and that the release dates wouldn't be affected by the writer's strike and everything.
Okay.
Because I remember when the book trailer for Peace Talks came out, they also dropped the release date for Battlegrounds as well, so it's not without precedent. Anyway,
with that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, auf Wiedersehen, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
shalom. I'm hungry now. Please fuck off so I can eat.